Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The green screen of the radar scan froze on November 14, 2017 at 11:47 p.m. To understand this, you need to know something about air traffic control. Radar does not freeze. The system is built on the principle of redundancy. The primary radar, the secondary radar, backup systems that kick in before the first radar detects a malfunction. Scanning is continuously secure. It does not stop unless something catastrophic happens to the entire network. That night, while maintaining a single target position at 47,000 feet directly above the terminal at Billings-Logan International Airport, the scan froze for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. I am Grant Holloway. I have been working as the tower chief at Billings-Logan for 19 years. I started as a ground controller in Boise and worked in approach control and center operations before moving into this position. I know the difference between weather anomalies, military traffic, equipment failure, and pilot error. I've dealt with emergency landings, bird strikes, turbulence events, and lightning strikes that knocked out half our systems. I've seen police chasing drug smugglers on the runway. I've given landing instructions to a student pilot in fog so thick he couldn't see his own wingtips. What I saw that November wasn't in any manual. It wasn't in any training scenario. And after what happened in those 4 minutes we lost, I'm not sure I want to know what it was. Billings sits in a unique position. We're a civilian airport with a long history of military coordination. Malmstrom Air Force Base is 140 miles west. We share airspace with everything from private prop planes to commercial jets to occasional military transports running exercises over the eastern Montana plains. Our radar coverage extends in a wide cone that picks up traffic from the Canadian border down to the Wyoming line. On a clear night, we can track a Cessna at 8,000 feet from 60 miles out. That's important because when something appears on our screen without a transponder signal, without a flight plan, without any radio contact, and sits motionless for over 4 minutes at an altitude no civilian aircraft can sustain without pressurization and fuel considerations that don't match the profile, you start running through possibilities fast. The shift started normal. I came on at 22 and sheer to relieve the evening crew. Toby Keene was my primary radar analyst that night, a sharp kid from Great Falls with 2 years of experience and a degree in aeronautical science. He had a habit of chewing gum too loud, but his eye for detail was flawless. We had light traffic, a FedEx cargo flight inbound from Memphis, a private twin-engine Beechcraft heading to Bozeman, 2 regional jets spaced 20 minutes apart coming in from Denver and Salt Lake. Nothing complicated. November in Montana means cold, dry air and excellent visibility. The kind of night where you could see every star and the horizon stayed sharp even after sunset. Toby called it out first. "Chief, I've got a primary return at Angels 47 with no secondary, no squawk, no ident, no mode C." I walked over to his station. The scope showed a single blip hovering in a zone where nothing should be. Angels 47 means 47,000 feet. That's well above the ceiling for most general aviation. Commercial jets cruise between 30,000 and 42,000. Anything higher is usually military or specialized research. The return was clean, solid, and completely stationary. "How long?" I asked. "Just appeared 20 seconds ago. Run a filter check. Could be a ghost." He cycled the filters. The target stayed. I pulled up the regional display to see if any centers had traffic we weren't aware of. Salt Lake Center showed nothing. Denver Center showed nothing. Malmstrom's military liaison frequency was quiet. I keyed the intercom to the supervisor's office. "We've got an unidentified primary at 47,000, no transponder, stationary. Checking for equipment fault." The response came back flat. "Copy. Keep me updated." I switched to the landline that connects us directly to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, which monitors airspace for exactly this kind of anomaly. The watch officer picked up on the second ring. I gave him the coordinates, altitude, and duration. He said he'd check their feed and call back. Standard procedure. You don't panic. You follow the steps. You rule out the obvious before you start making assumptions. Toby kept his eyes on the scope. The blip hadn't moved. Not a degree. Not 100 feet. It just sat there like it was painted on the screen. I've seen aircraft hold in a pattern. They make slow, predictable circles. I've seen helicopters hover. They drift with the wind, even a little. This thing wasn't drifting. It wasn't circling. It was locked. "Chief, I'm getting a weird return strength," Toby said. "It's fluctuating, but not like weather. It's pulsing." I leaned over the display, the yard. The intensity of the radar return was cycling. Strong, weak, strong, weak. Not random, rhythmic. A steady pattern every 3 to 4 seconds. That's not how metal reflects radar. That's not how weather distorts a signal. I felt the first hint of unease creep into my chest, but I pushed it down. You can't afford to get rattled in this job. You stay calm. You gather data. You make decisions based on facts, not feelings. The NORAD callback came through. "Billings Tower, we're not showing anything in your sector at that altitude. Can you confirm coordinates?" I read them back. He confirmed he had nothing. I asked if any military traffic was running dark for an exercise. He said negative, and that he'd flag it for further review. That's when I knew we weren't dealing with something routine. NORAD has sensors that make our radar look like a toy. If they weren't seeing it, either our equipment was lying to us, or something was interfering with both systems in a way that didn't make sense. "Toby, pull up the weather overlay. Let's see if there's any inversion layer or anomaly that could cause this." He layered the meteorological data over the radar feed. Clear skies. No precipitation. No temperature inversion. No conditions that would create a false return. The blip stayed exactly where it was, pulsing in that steady, deliberate rhythm. I made the call to the FedEx flight inbound from the east. "FedEx 1447, Billings Tower. Do you have visual or TCAS contact with any traffic at your 12 o'clock? Approximately 30 miles, altitude 47,000. The pilot's voice came back relaxed. "Negative, Billings. We're not showing any traffic on TCAS. Skies are clear. What are you seeing?" "We have a primary radar return in that area with no transponder. Just checking if you've got eyes on anything unusual." A pause, then, "Nothing visual, Tower. You want us to deviate for spacing?" "Negative. Maintain your course and altitude. Let us know if you see anything." "Will do." I looked at the clock. The target had been stationary for 2 minutes. Toby was running diagnostics on the radar system. Everything checked green. Primary radar, operational. Secondary radar, operational. All backup systems, operational. The equipment wasn't failing. The target wasn't a glitch. It was real. Or at least the radar was convinced it was real. That's when the lights started. You could see them through the tower windows. Not inside the airport. Outside, beyond the perimeter fence. In the open fields that stretched toward the rim rocks north of the runway. Small points of white light, maybe a dozen of them, arranged in a loose pattern. They didn't move. They didn't flicker. They just appeared, all at once, like someone had turned on a switch. I stepped to the window. Toby followed. We both stared for a second without saying anything. Then I grabbed the binoculars we keep for visual checks and brought them up. The lights were low to the ground, maybe 10 or 15 feet up, too high for vehicle headlights, too still for drones, and there were no roads out there, no structures, no reason for lights to be in that specific spot. Toby, call airport security. Tell them we've got lights on the north perimeter and to send a unit to check it out. He picked up the phone and relayed the message. I kept the binoculars on the lights. They stayed motionless. And then I noticed something else. Between us and the lights, the air looked wrong. It shimmered like heat rising off asphalt in summer, except it was November and the temperature outside was 28 degrees. The radio crackled. Billings Tower, FedEx 1447. We're picking up some kind of interference on our number 2 radio. It's faint but constant. Sounds like a low hum. I keyed the mic. Copy that, FedEx. We're not transmitting anything that should cause interference. Can you describe the sound? It's not static. It's a tone. Low frequency. Almost feels like it's vibrating the headset. Toby looked at me. I looked at the radar. The target was still there, still pulsing, still at 47,000 feet. I checked the time again. 3 minutes had passed. FedEx, are you experiencing any navigation or systems issues? Negative, Tower. Everything's green. Just the audio interference. Copy. Let us know if it changes. The security unit called in. Tower, this is Unit 3. We're approaching the north perimeter. I can see the lights you mentioned. They're definitely out there. No vehicles visible. No personnel. Just lights. Can you get closer? A pause. Yeah, we're moving in now. I switched my attention between the radar scope and the window. The lights were still there. The security truck's headlights swept across the field as it drove off the access road and onto the rough ground. I could see the truck bouncing slightly as it navigated the uneven terrain. It got within maybe 200 yards of the lights. Then it stopped. Tower. This is Unit 3. The voice sounded different. Tight. I'm not getting any closer. The lights aren't attached to anything. They're just floating. Say again. They're floating, Tower. No poles, no structures. They're just hanging in the air. And my radio's acting up. I'm getting the same hum FedEx mentioned. I felt the unease shift into something sharper. Unit 3, can you maintain visual and stand by? Yeah, I can do that, but I'm telling you, this isn't right. Toby was staring at the radar scope. Chief, the target's changing altitude. I moved back to the screen. The blip was descending. Not fast. Not like an aircraft losing altitude. Steady. Controlled. Dropping 1,000 feet every 10 seconds. I grabbed the handset for the emergency frequency and broadcast a general alert. All aircraft in the Billings vicinity. Be advised we are tracking an unidentified target descending through flight levels. Use caution and report any visual contact. No responses. The airspace was quiet except for the FedEx flight, still 25 miles out and cruising at 35,000 feet. The target continued its descent. 45,000 feet. 43,000, 40,000. The pulsing intensified. The return on the radar grew stronger with each sweep. And then the screen went black. Not just the radar. Everything. The entire console array. The lights in the tower dimmed. The computer systems reset. The backup generators kicked in with a low whine, and emergency lighting flickered on, casting the room in a dull red glow. The whole sequence took maybe 5 seconds. But in those 5 seconds, every system tied to radar and communication dropped offline. Chief, what the hell just happened? Toby's voice was sharp, higher than normal. I was already on the landline to the equipment room. No answer. I tried the supervisor's office. No answer. I tried the main terminal operations center. The line was dead. I looked out the window. The airfield lights were still on. The terminal was still lit. But the tower, the nerve center of everything we do, had just gone dark in a way that shouldn't be possible. The radar came back online first. The screen blinked, reset, and began its sweep. I watched the first rotation. No target, no blip at 47,000 feet, no descending object. The scope was clean. I checked the logs. The timestamp showed a gap. 4 minutes and 11 seconds. The system had recorded the start of the event and then nothing. No data, no targets, no tracks. Just a blank space where the recording should have been. Toby was running his hands through his hair. Did we just lose 4 minutes? I didn't answer right away. I was staring at the external camera feeds. They were coming back online one by one. Camera 1, runway approach. Camera 2, taxiway. Camera 3, north perimeter. The third feed was washed out, overexposed, like someone had pointed a floodlight directly at the lens. I cycled through the exposure settings. It didn't help. The image was pure white. Nothing visible. Just light. Unit 3, this is Tower. Do you copy? Static, then. Tower, Unit 3, I copy. Are you seeing this? What's your status? The lights are gone. They just vanished, all at once. I didn't see them move. They were there, and then they weren't. And my truck won't start. The engine's dead. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. Stay with your vehicle. I'm sending another unit to your position. Copy that, but, Chief? My watch stopped. Say again? My watch, it stopped, and my phone's screen is cracked. I didn't drop it. It was in my pocket. The glass just cracked. I set the handset down and turned to Toby. He was pale. FedEx 1.47 is still inbound, he said. They're not reporting any issues now. The interference stopped. I picked up the binoculars again and looked toward the north perimeter. The shimmer in the air was gone. The field looked normal. The security truck was a dark shape in the distance, motionless. I felt the weight of something I couldn't name pressing against my chest. We'd just lost 4 minutes of radar data, experienced a total system failure, and had multiple witnesses to lights that appeared and disappeared without explanation. And somewhere in that 4-minute gap, a target descended from 47,000 feet and vanished without a trace. I picked up the phone to call the FAA regional office. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know how to explain what had just happened. But I knew that whatever it wasn't over. That was only the beginning. The FAA inspector arrived 2 days later. His name was Rourke, a man in his 50s with gray hair and a face that suggested he'd seen enough bureaucratic nonsense to last 3 lifetimes. He sat across from me in the conference room with a legal pad, a voice recorder, and an expression that never changed. I walked him through the entire sequence. The stationary target, the pulsing radar return, the lights on the perimeter, the system failure, the 4-minute gap in the recording. He wrote notes. He asked questions. He didn't look surprised by any of it. When I finished, he set his pen down and leaned back in his chair. Mr. Holloway, I've been investigating air traffic incidents for 22 years. I've handled equipment failures, pilot deviation, near-miss events, and every flavor of human error you can imagine. What you're describing fits a pattern I've seen before. Not often, but enough that I know it when I hear it. What pattern? Unexplained radar contacts, system anomalies, witness reports of lights. They cluster in certain areas. Montana is one of them. Malmstrom's had multiple incidents over the years. Most of them get written off as equipment malfunction or atmospheric conditions, but the ones that involve multiple witnesses, physical effects on vehicles or electronics, and clear gaps in recorded data. He paused. Those don't get written off. they get filed. Filed where? That's above my clearance. What I can tell you is that your report will go into a system that tracks these events. It won't be made public. You won't see it on the news, but it'll be read by people who need to know. I stared at him. So, what do we do? Just pretend it didn't happen. You document it. You continue normal operations. You report any future incidents. And you don't talk about it outside official channels. If the media gets hold of this, it becomes a circus. You'll have conspiracy theorists, UFO hunters, and every nut with a podcast camped outside your tower. That doesn't help anyone. He gathered his notes and stood. One more thing. The security officer who was closest to the lights. Has he experienced any health issues since that night? The question caught me off guard. Not that I'm aware of. Why? Just a precaution. Some individuals who've had close proximity to these events report headaches, nausea, temporary vision problems. If he mentions anything, have him see a doctor, and make sure the visit is documented. Rourke left without another word. I sat in the conference room for a long time after he was gone, staring at the empty chair across from me. The whole conversation felt surreal. A federal investigator had just confirmed that what we experienced wasn't unique, that it fit a pattern, that there was a system in place to track it, and that I was supposed to keep my mouth shut and move on. But I couldn't move on. Because 3 nights after the radar gap, it happened again. I wasn't on duty. Toby called me at home just after midnight. His voice was shaking. "Chief, you need to get down here, now." I didn't ask questions. I threw on clothes and drove to the tower in 15 minutes. When I walked into the operations room, Toby was standing at the radar console with 2 other controllers, both staring at the screen. I looked at the scope and felt my stomach drop. 3 targets, not 1. 3 separate returns at altitudes ranging from 38,000 to 52,000 feet. All stationary, all pulsing in that same rhythmic pattern, and all positioned in a perfect triangular formation that spanned 20 miles. "How long?" I asked. 18 minutes, Toby said. They appeared simultaneously. No flight plans, no transponders, no radio contact. And Chief, NORAD's not seeing them. I grabbed the phone and called the NORAD watch officer. Same response as before. No traffic in our sector at those altitudes. I asked if they were running any kind of exercise or stealth operation. Negative. I asked if their sensors were experiencing any malfunction. Negative. Everything on their end was operating normally. Billings Tower, this is Northwest 2516 inbound from Seattle. We're showing 3 targets on our TCAS display that don't correlate with ATC traffic. Can you confirm? I keyed the mic. Northwest 2516, we're tracking 3 unidentified primary returns in your vicinity. They are stationary. Maintain your altitude and advise if you have visual. A long pause, then, Billings, we have visual. 3 lights, bright white, triangular formation. They're well above us, but visible. They're not moving. My hand tightened on the mic. Copy that, Northwest. Continue your approach and report any changes. Toby was pulling up the external camera feeds. I moved to the window. The sky was clear. No clouds, no haze. And there they were. 3 pinpoints of light arranged in a triangle, motionless against the black. They were brighter than stars, sharper, and they didn't twinkle the way distant objects do through atmospheric distortion. The pilot of Northwest 2516 called again. Billings, the lights are descending, slowly, maintaining formation. I watched through the binoculars. He was right. The 3 points were dropping in unison, keeping their geometric relationship exact. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Objects don't move like that. Not aircraft, not satellites, not weather balloons. The precision was unnatural. All aircraft, be advised, we have 3 unidentified targets descending through your airspace. Exercise extreme caution and report any proximity alerts. The radio stayed quiet except for acknowledgments. I checked the radar. The targets were at 30,000 feet now. Still descending. Still locked in formation. And then the interference started. It wasn't on one frequency, it was on all of them. A low, oscillating tone that made the speakers hum and vibrate. I twisted the squelch knob. It didn't help. The tone persisted, rising and falling like a siren, but slower, more deliberate. Toby was pressing his headset against his ears and wincing. "Chief, I'm getting a headache, it's bad." I felt it too, a pressure building behind my eyes, a sensation like someone was pushing on my temples from the inside. I pulled off my headset and the tone faded, but I could still feel it. Not in my ears, in my chest, in my teeth, the same way you feel bass from a subwoofer, except this was sharper, more invasive. The lights outside grew brighter. They were lower now, maybe 15,000 feet, close enough that I could make out a faint halo around each one. And then they stopped descending. They hung there, perfectly still, forming a triangle that seemed to frame the airport itself. "Northwest 2516, confirm your position." The response came through garbled, broken by static. "Billings, we're at 10 miles, experiencing navigation. Instruments are..." The transmission cut out entirely. I felt a spike of adrenaline. "Northwest 2516. If you can hear this transmission, rock your wings." I grabbed the binoculars and scanned the approach path. I found the aircraft, its navigation lights blinking. The wings rocked. He could hear me, but he couldn't respond. I switched to the emergency frequency and broadcast a blind transmission. "Northwest 2516. If you are unable to communicate, you are cleared for a straight-in visual approach runway 10 left. Acknowledge with wing rock." The wings rocked again. I exhaled. At least he could still fly the airplane. I watched him continue his descent, following the approach path despite the communication failure. The 3 lights above remained motionless. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished. Not gradually, not one at a time. All 3 extinguished in the same instant, like someone had flipped a switch. The interference stopped. The pressure in my head released. The radio crackled back to life. "Billings Tower, Northwest 2516. Do you read?" "Northwest Billings Tower, we read you loud and clear. What's your status?" "We're okay now. Navigation is back online. Radios are functioning. We lost everything for about 90 seconds. Autopilot disconnected. We had to fly manual. What the hell were those lights?" "Unknown at this time. Continue your approach. You're cleared to land runway 10 left." "Copy. Cleared to land." I stood there watching the jet touch down, roll out, and exit the runway. Normal, routine, like nothing had happened. I turned back to the radar scope. The 3 targets were gone. The recording showed the same pattern as before. A gap, 7 minutes this time. 7 minutes where the system recorded nothing. Toby was sitting with his head in his hands. "This isn't random, is it?" I didn't answer, because he was right, it wasn't random. The first event happened on November 14th. The second on November 17th. 3 days apart. The targets appeared in formation. They descended with precision. They caused the same interference, the same system failures, the same gaps in recorded data. Someone or something was testing us, learning our systems, pushing boundaries. I called Rourke the next morning. He listened without interruption and then said he'd send the report up the chain. I asked him, point blank, "What do you think these things are?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Officially, I don't speculate." Unofficially, I think there's technology operating in our airspace that doesn't match anything in the public record. Whether it's ours or someone else's, I couldn't tell you. But the pattern suggests intent. These aren't accidents, they're demonstrations. Demonstrations of what? That's the question, isn't it? He hung up. I sat at my desk staring at the phone. Demonstrations. The word rolled around in my head. Demonstrations of capability. Demonstrations of presence. Demonstrations that they could appear, interfere, and disappear without consequence. The third event came 4 days later. This time, I was ready. I'd contacted a friend who worked with the National Weather Service and asked if he could set up a portable magnetometer and RF spectrum analyzer near the tower. He owed me a favor and didn't ask too many questions. The equipment was basic, but it would give us data beyond the radar. I also coordinated with the security team to have multiple units positioned around the perimeter with cameras and recording devices. At 23:34 on November 21st, the targets appeared again. 4 this time, not 3. 4 separate returns forming a square pattern at altitudes between 35,000 and 50,000 feet. I watched the radar, the cameras, and the spectrum analyzer simultaneously. The targets were stationary for approximately 2 minutes. Then they began to move. Not descending, not in formation. They broke apart, and each one traced a different path across our airspace. Fast. Faster than any aircraft I'd tracked. The radar showed speeds in excess of 4,000 miles per hour. Mach 5 hypersonic. And they maneuvered without deceleration. Sharp 90-degree turns. Instantaneous stops. Movements that would generate G-forces no human pilot could survive. The spectrum analyzer went crazy. Peaks across multiple frequency bands. Radio, microwave, even higher into ranges we don't use for civilian communication. The magnetometer spiked. Local magnetic field disturbances strong enough to affect navigation equipment. I keyed the intercom to security. All units report visual contact. 3 units called in simultaneously. Lights. Multiple lights. Moving at impossible speeds. Changing direction without arcs. Blinking in and out like strobes. One officer said his camera wouldn't focus. The autofocus kept hunting, trying to lock onto something that didn't behave like a normal object. And then they converged. All 4 targets moved toward a single point directly above the runway and merged. On the radar, it looked like 4 blips collapsing into one. The combined return was massive, stronger than anything I'd seen. The screen brightened, the spectrum analyzer maxed out, and the entire airport went silent. Not just the radios, everything. The hum of HVAC systems, the distant sound of a jet engine spooling down at the terminal, the wind. It was like someone had hit mute on the world. I could see Toby's mouth moving, but no sound came out. I couldn't hear my own breathing. The silence lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then it released, and sound came flooding back in a rush that made my ears ring. The radar targets split apart again, 4 separate returns. They accelerated outward in different directions and vanished off the edge of our coverage area. Gone. Just like that. I sat down hard in the chair. My hands were shaking. Toby was staring at me with wide eyes. The other controllers looked like they'd seen a ghost. And in the back of my mind, a single thought crystallized. Whatever these things were, they weren't hiding anymore. They were showing us exactly what they could do. The recordings from that night were the clearest we'd ever captured. The cameras caught the lights. The spectrum analyzer captured the frequency anomalies. The magnetometer showed the field disturbances. It was all there, documented, undeniable. I compiled everything into a report and sent it to Rourke. He called me 2 hours later. "Holloway, I need you to secure all copies of that data, physical and digital. Don't share it. Don't upload it. Don't discuss it with anyone outside official channels. Why? Because what you captured is the most comprehensive documentation of these events I've seen in a decade, and that makes it sensitive. Sensitive how? I can't say. Just secure it. Someone will be in touch. He hung up. I looked at Toby. Copy everything to an external drive, then lock it in the safe. He nodded. We spent the next hour backing up files, clearing caches, making sure every piece of data was preserved and protected. When we finished, I locked the drive in the tower safe and reset the combination. I didn't tell anyone else the new code, not even the shift supervisor. That night, I went home and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the silence, the way the world had gone mute, the way the 4 targets had merged into one. It felt orchestrated, intentional, like they wanted us to see it, to record it, to know that they could do it. And that terrified me more than anything else. The man who came to collect the data didn't introduce himself with a name. He showed credentials that identified him as Department of Defense, but the agency logo was one I didn't recognize. Small, understated. He wore a dark suit, spoke quietly, and had the kind of presence that makes you choose your words carefully. He arrived at the tower 3 days after my conversation with Rourke, walked into my office without knocking, and sat down across from me like we'd scheduled a meeting. "Mr. Holloway, I understand you have recordings from the events of November 21st. I nodded. "In the safe. I need them, all copies, digital and physical." I hesitated. "What's this about?" He tilted his head slightly. "You've documented something that very few people get to see. The data you've collected correlates with similar events across 7 different states over the last 18 months. We're trying to understand the pattern. Your recordings might help." "What are they?" "That's classified." "Are they ours?" He didn't blink. "I can't answer that." "Then whose are they?" He leaned forward. "Mr. Holloway, you're asking questions I can't answer in this setting. What I can tell you is that your cooperation is important. The data will be analyzed by people with the resources and clearance to handle it appropriately. You'll be doing your country a service." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I got up, opened the safe, and handed him the external drive. He placed it in a metal case, locked it, and stood. "One more thing," he said. "You'll be receiving a visit from a medical team in the next few days. Standard procedure. They'll run some tests. Blood work, cognitive function, imaging. Nothing invasive, just a precaution." "Precaution against what?" "Exposure." He left without elaborating. I sat in my office for an hour afterward, staring at the empty safe. Exposure. The word settled in my gut like a stone. I'd been in the tower during all 3 events. I'd felt the pressure in my head, the interference, the silence. Whatever those things were, they'd been close enough to affect us physically. And now the DoD wanted to know if there were consequences. The medical team arrived 5 days later. 2 doctors, 1 male, 1 female, both professional and efficient. They set up in a conference room and called each member of the tower's staff who'd been present during the events. Toby went first, then the other controllers, then me. The exam was thorough. Blood pressure, heart rate, reflex tests, cognitive assessments. They drew blood. They performed an EEG to measure brain activity. They used a handheld device I didn't recognize to scan my head and torso. The female doctor asked about symptoms. Headaches, nausea, dizziness, sleep disturbances, changes in vision or hearing. I admitted to the headaches. She wrote notes. The male doctor asked if I'd experienced any gaps in memory or unusual dreams. I said no. He nodded and made more notes. When the exam finished, they thanked me and said the results would be compiled into a report. I asked if there was anything I should be concerned about. The female doctor smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes and said, "We'll let you know." They packed up and left. I never saw them again. I never received a report. And that told me everything I needed to know. Whatever they found, it wasn't something they wanted to share. The event stopped after November 21st. No more radar contacts. No more lights. No more interference. The airspace over Billings returned to normal. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I kept waiting for it to happen again, but it didn't. The silence was almost worse than the incidents themselves. At least when something was happening, you could react. You could document. You could feel like you were doing something. But waiting was corrosive. Toby transferred to Salt Lake City in February. He said it was for a promotion, but I knew better. He couldn't take it anymore. The not knowing. The watching the sky every night wondering if it would happen again. I didn't blame him. I thought about transferring too. But where would I go? The events weren't tied to me. They were tied to the airspace, to the region. Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Malmstrom, missile fields, remote terrain with low population density. Perfect for something that didn't want to be seen but needed to be close to strategic installations. In March, a researcher from a university I won't name contacted me. She was studying aerial phenomena and had somehow gotten wind of the incidents. I don't know how. The reports were supposed to be secured, but information leaks. It always does. She wanted to interview me. She wanted copies of the recordings. She promised anonymity and academic rigor. I told her I couldn't help her and hung up. She called back twice. I didn't answer. In April, I got a letter. No return address. Postmarked from Colorado. Inside was a single piece of paper with a list of dates and locations. November 14th, Billings, MT. November 17th, Billings, MT. November 21st, Billings, MT, and then others. October 3rd, Great Falls, MT. September 12th, Minot, ND. August 27th, Cheyenne, WY. The list went on. 14 entries total, all within a 3-month window. All near military installations. All following the same pattern. Radar contacts, system failures, lights, and gaps in recorded data. At the bottom of the page was a single handwritten sentence. "You're not the only one." I burned the letter. I don't know who sent it. I don't know how they got my address. But the message was clear. This wasn't isolated. It wasn't random. And there were other people, other controllers, other witnesses who'd seen the same things I had. We were part of something larger. A pattern that stretched across state lines and jurisdictions. A pattern that someone was tracking, or maybe trying to suppress. In May, I made a decision. I wrote down everything I remembered. Every detail. Every conversation. Every reading from the radar and the equipment. I wrote it by hand on paper because I didn't trust digital files. When I finished, I had 47 pages. I sealed them in an envelope, addressed it to someone I trust, and stored it in a safety deposit box with instructions that it should only be opened if something happens to me. I'm not paranoid, I'm careful. There's a difference. In June, I was sitting in the tower during a quiet night shift when the radar picked up a single return at 48,000 feet. No transponder, no flight plan. Stationary. My heart started pounding. I stared at the screen, waiting for the pulsing. Waiting for the interference, waiting for the lights. But after 30 seconds, the return started moving. Slow, steady, following a normal flight path. I called the number for Malmstrom's liaison office. They confirmed it was one of theirs. A high-altitude research balloon. Not a drill, not a test, just a balloon. I exhaled and felt the tension drain out of my shoulders. False alarm. But the fact that my first instinct was fear, not curiosity, told me something had fundamentally changed in the way I viewed the sky. I used to love this job. The precision, the communication, the choreography of aircraft moving through controlled airspace. Now, every unidentified blip felt like a threat. Every gap in communication felt like a warning. I'm still the tower chief at Billings Logan. I still come to work. I still train new controllers and file reports and coordinate with NORAD and handle the daily operations of a mid-sized regional airport. But I watch the sky differently now. I check the radar more often. I listen to the frequencies more carefully. And when the night is quiet and the stars are clear, I think about those lights, the way they moved, the way they merged, the way they made the world go silent. I don't know what they were. I don't know where they came from or what they wanted, but I know they're still out there, and I know they'll come back. Maybe not to Billings, maybe not to me, but somewhere, to someone. And when they do, I hope that person has the sense to document everything, to secure the data, to make sure it's preserved, because the only thing worse than not knowing is forgetting. There's a phrase in air traffic control, maintain situational awareness. It means you need to know what's happening in your airspace at all times. Every aircraft, every altitude, every heading, you maintain awareness so you can make decisions, avoid conflicts, and keep people safe. But what do you do when something enters your airspace that doesn't follow the rules? That doesn't communicate? That doesn't behave like anything you've been trained to handle? You document it, you report it, and you hope someone, somewhere, is paying attention. The night of November 14th, 2017, changed the way I see the world. It took something I thought was solid, predictable, and governed by clear rules, and showed me that there are exceptions. There are things that move through our airspace, operate at altitudes we can detect but not explain, and interact with our systems in ways that leave more questions than answers. I've had people ask me if I believe in UFOs. That's the wrong question. Belief doesn't enter into it. I don't believe in what I saw on those radar screens. I know what I saw. It's documented. It's corroborated by multiple witnesses, recorded data, and physical effects. The question isn't whether these things exist. The question is what they are and what they want. And I don't have an answer to that. What I do have is a responsibility to the people who fly through my airspace, to the controllers who work under my supervision, to the pilots who trust us to guide them safely. That responsibility doesn't change just because something unexplained happened. If anything, it makes it more important. Because if these events are going to continue, and I believe they will, then we need people in positions like mine who will take them seriously, who will document them, who will push for answers instead of accepting silence. I'm writing this account because I think it's important for people to know, not to scare them, not to fuel conspiracy theories, but to provide a clear, factual record of what happened. The events I've described occurred. The data was collected. The witnesses were real. And the phenomenon, whatever it is, remains unexplained. If you work in air traffic control, especially in regions near military installations, pay attention to your radar. Pay attention to the patterns. If you see stationary returns at high altitudes with no transponder, if you experience system failures with no clear cause, if pilots report interference or lights they can't explain, document it, record everything, and report it through the proper channels. Because the more data we have, the better chance we have of understanding what's happening in our skies. The Billings radar gap lasted 4 minutes and 11 seconds. But the questions it raised are still with me. Every night when I sit in that tower, I wonder if tonight will be the night they come back. I wonder if the next return on the radar will be the one that doesn't fit. The one that makes the world go silent. The one that reminds me that despite all our technology, all our training, all our procedures, there are still things moving through our airspace that we don't understand and can't control. And that thought keeps me awake long after my shift ends. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone reading this, it would be this. Don't dismiss what you can't explain. Don't assume that because something doesn't fit your understanding of the world, it must be a mistake or a malfunction. Sometimes, the most important data is the data that doesn't make sense. Sometimes, the thing that breaks the pattern is the thing that reveals the truth. The radar sweep over Billings-Logan International Airport runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's constant, it's mechanical, it's reliable. But on November 14, 2017, it stopped for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. And in that gap, something happened that I'm still trying to understand. I don't know if I'll ever get answers. I don't know if the man in the dark suit will ever come back with information. I don't know if the data I handed over will lead to anything, or if it's sitting in a classified archive somewhere, forgotten. But I know this. I'm not alone. The letter told me that. And if you're reading this and you've experienced something similar, if you've seen the lights or felt the interference or watched your radar freeze while something sat motionless in your airspace, then you're not alone either. We're part of a pattern that someone, somewhere, understands better than we do. And maybe that's the most unsettling part. Not that these things exist, but that someone knows what they are and has chosen not to tell us. For now, I keep doing my job. I keep watching the sky. And I keep hoping that one day, the silence will break and we'll finally get the answers we deserve. Until then, I'll be in the tower, maintaining situational awareness, even when that awareness includes things I can't fully explain. That's all any of us can do. The call came through at 22:17 Mountain Time on March 8, 2019. You learn to read voices in this job: pitch, pace, the spaces between words. A pilot who's calm sounds different from a pilot who's rattled but holding it together. The voice that came through the tower frequency that night was the second kind. Tight. Controlled. But underneath, you could hear the tremor. I've been working air traffic control at Bozeman Yellowstone International for 11 years, and I knew immediately that something was wrong. Bozeman Tower, SkyWest 4782, were going around. My name is Mira Jensen. I'm a tower control officer, which means I'm responsible for everything that moves on the runways and in the immediate airspace around the airport. Landing clearances, takeoff clearances, ground traffic, sequencing. When a pilot calls a go-around, it means they've aborted their landing. Could be a dozen reasons. Unstable approach, wind shear, another aircraft on the runway, equipment malfunction. You don't ask questions first. You clear them to climb, give them instructions, and get them safely back in the pattern. SkyWest 4782, Roger. Climb and maintain 4000. Fly runway heading. Traffic will be sequenced for another approach. There was a pause, longer than normal. I could hear breathing on the line, then, "Tower, we need a minute. We had something on the runway, a light, bright, we couldn't see the threshold." I felt the first flicker of unease. SkyWest 4782, say again? You had a light on the runway? Affirmative, a massive light, right at the threshold of 09 left. It was intense. My first officer and I both had to look away. It blinded us for a second. I keyed the intercom to the ground control station. Leo, you seeing anything on 09 left? SkyWest just called a go-around. Says there's a light on the threshold. Leo Brandt was our senior security coordinator that night, a former Air Force security specialist who'd been working airport operations for 15 years. He grabbed the binoculars and moved to the window that faced runway 09L. I did the same. The runway stretched out before us, lit by the edge lighting and approach lights that guide aircraft to the touchdown zone. Everything looked normal. No vehicles, no obstructions, no lights that shouldn't be there. "Tower, I'm not seeing anything," Leo said over the intercom. "Runway's clear. All lighting systems normal." I keyed the radio. SkyWest 4782, tower shows runway 09 left clear. No obstructions visible. "Can you describe what you saw?" Another pause, this one even longer. It was like a sphere or a cloud, I don't know. It was white, almost blue-white, and it was sitting right on the center line. When we got close, maybe half a mile out, it flared. That's when we initiated the go-around. I felt my pulse quicken. Did it move? Was it stationary? It was stationary when we saw it, then I don't know how to describe this, it didn't move. It just wasn't there anymore, like it blinked out. I looked at Leo. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. SkyWest 4782, copy that. We're going to inspect the runway. Stand by for sequencing. I switched frequencies and called the operations vehicle. Ops 1, tower. I need a runway inspection on 09 left. Possible foreign object debris reported by arriving aircraft. The response came back immediately. Copy, tower. Rolling now. I watched the operations truck exit the equipment garage and drive toward the runway. The headlights swept across the pavement as it turned onto the taxiway. Leo had pulled up the airport surveillance camera feeds on the monitor. Multiple angles of runway 09L. All of them showed the same thing. Empty pavement, normal lighting, no obstructions. "Mira, I'm looking at the recorded feed from the last 5 minutes," Leo said. "There's nothing, no light, no object, nothing that would cause a pilot to go around." I grabbed the handset for the direct line to the FAA Center in Salt Lake. They monitor our airspace and coordinate with us on traffic flow. "Salt Lake Center, Bozeman Tower. We've got a situation. SkyWest 4782 reported a light mass on runway 09 left during approach. Pilot initiated go-around. We're not seeing anything on visual or camera. Can you check your feeds?" The controller on the other end took a moment. "Bozeman, Salt Lake. We show SkyWest 4782 on a normal approach until the go-around call. No radar anomalies. No other traffic in the vicinity. What kind of light are we talking about?" Pilot described it as a sphere or cloud, white to blue-white, intense enough to cause temporary vision impairment. Says it was stationary on the runway center line, then disappeared. "Stand by." The operations truck had reached the runway. I watched through the binoculars as it drove the full length of 09L, sweeping the pavement with spotlights. The driver keyed his radio. "Tower, Ops 1, runway is clear, no debris, no damage, no marks, no indication of any foreign object." "Copy, Ops 1, thanks. Return to standby." I looked at the radar scope. SkyWest 4782 was in a holding pattern at 4,000 feet, waiting for instructions. I needed to get them back on the ground, but I also needed to understand what they'd seen, or thought they'd seen. SkyWest 4782, Bozeman Tower, runway inspection complete. 09 left is clear. Are you ready for another approach? The pilot's voice came back steadier now. "Affirmative, Tower. We're ready. But I'm telling you, we both saw it. It was real. Understood Sky West. Turn left, heading 270, descend and maintain 3000. Expect vectors for the visual approach runway 09 left. Left 270, down to 3000. Sky West 4782. I sequenced them back into the pattern and watched as they flew the downwind leg. Everything was routine. Normal airspeeds, normal altitudes, normal radio calls. When I cleared them for the approach, the pilot acknowledged without hesitation. I stood at the window with the binoculars, tracking their landing lights as they descended on the glide path. Steady, stable, no deviation. They crossed the threshold, touched down smoothly, and rolled out. Normal. After they exited the runway and switched to ground frequency, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Leo was still at the monitor, scrolling through camera footage. "Mira, I've gone back 30 minutes. There's nothing on any camera angle that matches what they described." I pulled up the radio recording system. Every transmission we make is recorded and stored with timestamps. Audio is evidence. It's documentation. If something happened, it would be in the recordings. I found the sequence and played it back. The pilot's voice calling the go-around. The description of the light, the tremor underneath the words. I played it again, and that's when I heard it. There was a sound in the background, faint underneath the pilot's voice, a low hum, almost like interference, but not quite. It was there for maybe 2 seconds and then it was gone. I adjusted the audio levels and played it again. The hum was clearer this time. Oscillating, rising and falling in a slow, deliberate pattern. "Leo, listen to this." I played the recording for him. He leaned in, focusing. When it finished, he looked at me. "That's not normal radio interference. That's too clean. Too regular. Play it again," he said. I did. 3 more times. Each time the hum was there. Each time it lasted exactly 2 seconds. And each time it occurred right when the pilot said the light flared. I felt a chill run down my spine. "We need to talk to the crew." SkyWest 4782 was a regional jet, a Canadair CRJ 700, with 2 pilots and a full load of passengers heading to Bozeman from Denver. Standard evening flight. Nothing unusual about the routing or the crew. After the aircraft parked at the gate, I called the operations supervisor and asked if we could speak with the pilots before they left the airport. He coordinated with the airline, and 15 minutes later, the captain and first officer walked into the tower. The captain was a woman in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed and professional. The first officer was younger, maybe early 30s, with the kind of nervous energy that told me he was still replaying what happened in his head. We sat down in the break room. I brought up the audio recording on a laptop. "I need you to walk me through exactly what you saw," I said. "Start from when you first noticed the light." The captain nodded. We were on final approach, about 2 miles out. Visibility was excellent, clear night, no weather. We had the runway in sight. I was flying, my first officer was monitoring. At about 1.5 miles, he said, "What is that?" I looked, and there was a light on the runway. Not from the edge lights or the approach lights, this was different. How so? It was 3-dimensional, like a ball of light sitting on the pavement. Maybe 30 feet in diameter, it was glowing white, almost pale blue in the center. At first, I thought it might be a vehicle with high beams, but it wasn't shaped like headlights. It was round, distinct. The first officer spoke up. "It wasn't moving. It was just sitting there, right where we were supposed to touch down. I remember thinking, we need to go around. And before I could say it, the light got brighter. Like someone turned up the intensity. It went from bright to blinding in less than a second." I watched his face. He wasn't exaggerating. He wasn't embellishing. He was describing something he genuinely saw and genuinely feared. When it flared, what did you do?" "I looked away," he said. "Had to. It was too bright, like staring into a welding arc. The captain called the go-around and I confirmed. We advanced the throttles and climbed out. And when you looked back, it was gone. Just gone. No fade, no dimming. No, it was there, and then it wasn't." I played the audio recording for them. When the hum came through, both pilots reacted. The captain straightened in her chair. The first officer leaned forward. "That," the first officer said, pointing at the laptop. "That sound, we heard that in the cockpit." My stomach tightened. "You heard it through your headsets?" "Not just the headsets," the captain said. "It was in the cabin. My first officer and I both heard it. It wasn't loud, but it was there, low, vibrating, and it happened right when the light flared." I looked at Leo. His expression had gone hard. "Did any of your passengers mention anything? Seeing the light, hearing the sound?" The captain shook her head. "I don't think so. We didn't make an announcement about the go-around. Just told them we were repositioning for another approach. No one said anything unusual during deplaning." I made notes, 2 pilots, credible witnesses, experienced professionals with no reason to fabricate. Both saw the same thing. Both heard the same sound, but the cameras saw nothing. The runway inspection found nothing. The radar showed nothing. Is there anything else, any detail, no matter how small? The first officer hesitated. Then, "My instruments flickered." "Explain." "Right when the light flared, my primary flight display and navigation display both flickered. Not off, just a quick flicker, like a momentary power drop. It only lasted a fraction of a second, but I saw it." "Did you check for any malfunctions after landing?" "Yeah, ran the diagnostics. Everything came back normal, no errors, no faults." I thanked them for their time and walked them back to the operations area. After they left, I returned to the tower and sat down at my console. Leo was still at the monitor, reviewing footage. "Mira, I need to show you something." He pulled up a different camera angle. This one was mounted near the approach end of the runway 9L, facing down the length of the pavement. He scrolled to the timestamp when SkyWest 4782 was on the final approach. "Watch the pavement, right here." He played the footage. The runway lights were steady. The pavement was empty. And then, for exactly 2 seconds, the video image distorted. Not a glitch, not a pixelation error. The entire frame seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising off asphalt in summer. But it was March. It was cold. There was no heat. "You see that?" Leo asked. "Yeah? Play it again." He did. The shimmer was unmistakable. It started at the center line, right where the pilot said the light was, and spread outward in a circle maybe 50 feet in diameter. Then it was gone. The video returned to normal. "That's not a camera malfunction," I said. "No, it's not." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Leo said, "Mira, I've worked airport security for a long time. I've seen a lot of weird stuff. Birds flying into engines, lightning strikes, fuel spills, equipment failures, but I've never seen anything like this." I nodded. "Neither have I." "What do we do?" "We file a report, and we document everything." I spent the next 2 hours writing the incident report. I included the pilot statements, the audio recordings, the video footage, and the runway inspection results. I noted the shimmer in the camera feed and the hum in the radio transmission. I kept the language factual, clinical, devoid of speculation. When I finished, I submitted it to the FAA regional office and sent a copy to the airport director. The response came the next morning. A terse email from the regional office acknowledging receipt of the report and stating that it would be reviewed. No follow-up questions, no request for additional information, just an acknowledgement. That was it. I called the duty officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base, which is about 90 miles north of Bozeman. Malmstrom monitors the airspace over Montana and coordinates with civilian airports on military traffic. If something unusual was happening in our area, they would know. Malmstrom Operations, this is Sergeant Voss. Sergeant Voss, this is Officer Jensen at Bozeman Tower. I'm calling to check if there were any military operations in our vicinity last night, specifically around 22 hours. Hold one. I waited. After a minute, he came back. Negative, Officer Jensen. We had no traffic in your area at that time. No exercises, no transports, no activity. Why do you ask? We had an incident. A pilot reported seeing a light on the runway during approach. I wanted to rule out any military involvement. A light? What kind of light? I described it briefly. He went quiet. Officer Jensen, I'm going to transfer you to someone. Hold on. The line clicked, silence. Then a new voice. Older, more authoritative. This is Major Carlin. You reported a light incident at Bozeman? Yes, sir. Last night at 22:17. Pilot reported a spherical light on the runway threshold. Intense, blue-white, approximately 30 feet in diameter. It caused a go-around. When they repositioned for another approach, the light was gone. Did you recover any physical evidence? No, sir. Runway inspection found nothing, but we have audio recordings and video footage showing anomalies. Another pause. Officer Jensen, I need you to send me everything you have. All recordings, all footage, all statements. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. I'll send you a secure email address. Use that. Don't send it through regular channels. Understood. He gave me the address and ended the call. No explanation, no context, just a request for data. I looked at Leo, who'd been listening. That felt official. Yeah, he said. It did. I sent the files that afternoon, encrypted, secure. And then I waited. Days passed. No response from the FAA. No response from Malmstrom. The incident report sat in the system, logged and filed, but no one seemed interested in following up. It was like it never happened, but I couldn't forget. The look in the pilot's eyes, the hum in the audio, the shimmer in the video, and the feeling, deep in my gut, that whatever caused that light wasn't random. It was deliberate. 2 weeks later, I was working another night shift when the radio crackled with a familiar voice. Bozeman Tower, Horizon 2193, requesting clearance for approach runway 09 left. I cleared them in, standard procedure. They flew the approach, stable, on profile. And then, at 3/4 of a mile from the threshold, the pilot's voice came through tight and urgent. Bozeman Tower, Horizon 2193, going around. My heart dropped. Horizon 2193, Roger. Climb and maintain 4000. Fly runway heading. State reason for go around. The response was immediate. Tower. We've got a light, same as before, on the threshold. It's bright. We can't see the runway. Leo was already at the window, binoculars up. Mira, I see it. I grabbed my own binoculars and looked. There, right at the threshold of the runway 09L, was a sphere of light. Blue-white, glowing. Exactly as the SkyWest crew had described. It hung in the air maybe 10 feet off the pavement, motionless, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic intensity. Leo, are the cameras getting this? Yeah, I'm recording. The light stayed for maybe 20 seconds. Then, just like before, it flared. The intensity increased tenfold. I had to turn away, even from the distance of the tower. When I looked back, it was gone, vanished. The runway was clear. Horizon 2193, the light is no longer visible. Runway appears clear. Are you ready for another approach? A long pause, then, Tower, we'd like to divert to Billings. We're not comfortable landing on that runway. I couldn't blame them. Horizon 2193, cleared to Billings as requested. Contact Salt Lake Center on 124.7. They acknowledged and turned away. I watched them climb and disappear into the night sky. Leo was already on the phone, calling the airport director. I pulled up the camera feed and started the recording. This time we had it. Clear video. Clear visual confirmation from 2 tower personnel, and another go-around from a commercial crew. The pattern was undeniable now. Twice. Same runway, same location, same description, same result. Whatever this light was, it wasn't random. It was targeting runway ZO9L, and it was going to happen again. The meeting happened 3 days later in a conference room at the Bozeman Airport Administration Building. Present were the airport director, 2 representatives from the FAA, a liaison from Malmstrom Air Force Base, Leo, and myself. The video footage played on a screen at the front of the room. The sphere of light, clear and undeniable, hovering at the runway threshold. The flare, the disappearance. No one spoke during the playback. When it finished, the FAA representative, a man named Hollis, set down his pen. Officer Jensen, walk us through the timeline again. I did, both incidents. The dates, times, crew statements, audio anomalies, video evidence. Everything documented, everything preserved. When I finished, Hollis exchanged a look with his colleague, a woman named Dern. She nodded slightly. We've reviewed the data you submitted, Dern said. The audio signature matches similar events recorded at other locations. I leaned forward. What other locations? She hesitated. Then, Great Falls, Missoula, Billings. Over the last 18 months, we've had 7 incidents involving unexplained light phenomena near or on airport property. All in Montana, all sharing similar characteristics. Why weren't we informed? Because, until now, we didn't have visual confirmation from tower personnel. Most incidents were pilot-reported only. This is the first time we have direct observation from ATC and recorded video evidence. The Malmstrom liaison, a Major Reeves, spoke up. We've been tracking these events in coordination with NORAD. There's no indication of foreign or domestic aircraft involvement. No drones, no balloons, no experimental technology from any known source. Then what is it? Leo asked. Reeves didn't flinch. Unknown. The room went silent. The word hung in the air like a weight. Unknown. Not equipment failure, not misidentification, not weather. Unknown. Hollis cleared his throat. The FAA is issuing a notice to airmen for runway 09 left. We're recommending that crews exercise extreme caution during night approaches and report any unusual visual phenomena immediately. We're also installing additional monitoring equipment at Bozeman to capture more data if another event occurs. What kind of equipment? I asked. Spectrometers, magnetometers, enhanced optical sensors. We need to understand the physical properties of whatever is generating these lights. Frequency, intensity, magnetic field variations. The more data we collect, the better chance we have of identifying the source. And if we can't identify it? No one answered. The meeting ended with instructions to maintain normal operations and continue reporting procedures. As people filed out, Major Reeves approached me. "Officer Jensen, can I speak with you privately?" We walked to an empty office. He closed the door and sat down. "What I'm about to tell you is not in any official report, but you need to hear it." I nodded. 3 years ago, we had an incident at Malmstrom. Multiple missile silos went offline simultaneously. No mechanical failure. No cyber intrusion. The systems just stopped responding. While our teams were investigating, security personnel at 3 separate locations reported seeing lights in the sky. Spherical, blue-white, moving in patterns that didn't match any known aircraft. He paused, gauging my reaction. When the silos came back online, every system checked out. No errors, no damage. But the logs showed a 2-minute gap where no data was recorded, just like your radar gap at the tower. I felt my pulse quicken. "Are you saying these events are connected?" "I'm saying there's a pattern. A pattern that suggests intelligence, coordination. Whatever these lights are, they're not random atmospheric phenomena. They're targeting specific locations, military installations, airports, places with strategic or operational significance. Why? If I knew that, we'd be having a very different conversation." He stood and handed me a card with a number on it. "If anything else happens, call me directly. Don't go through channels. Don't wait for approval. Call me." I took the card. "What do you think they are, Major?" He looked at me for a long moment. "I think we're being observed, studied. And I think whoever or whatever is doing it doesn't care that we know." He left. I sat in the office holding the card, feeling the weight of what he'd just told me. Observed, studied. The words echoed in my mind. I thought about the light on the runway, the way it had appeared exactly where it would cause maximum disruption, the way it had flared when the aircraft got close, forcing a go-around. It wasn't random, it was intentional. The additional monitoring equipment arrived a week later. A team of technicians installed sensors around runway 09L, each one calibrated to detect electromagnetic anomalies, light spectrum variations, and magnetic field disturbances. They worked quickly and efficiently, then packed up and left without much conversation. The equipment fed data directly to a server that transmitted information to the FAA, Malmstrom, and NORAD in real time. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Normal operations, no incidents, no lights. I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been happening had moved on. Then, on April 14th at 23:52, the sensors went active. I was in the tower when the alert came through. Leo was monitoring the sensor feed on a laptop. "Mira, I've got spikes, electromagnetic and magnetic, coming from the approach end of 09 left." I moved to the window. At first I saw nothing. Then, slowly, the light began to materialize. Not appear. Materialize. It started as a faint glow, almost imperceptible, and gradually intensified until it became the same blue-white sphere we'd seen before. 30 feet in diameter, hovering 10 feet above the pavement, pulsing. "Leo, are the sensors recording?" "Yeah, everything's recording. EM readings are off the scale. Magnetic field is fluctuating like crazy." I grabbed the radio. "All aircraft, Bozeman Tower, be advised runway 09 left is temporarily closed due to observed obstruction. Use runway 12 for all operations." There was no inbound traffic at the moment, but I wanted the alert out in case someone was approaching. I pulled up the camera feeds. Multiple angles of the sphere, clear, sharp, undeniable. And then it did something new. It moved, not quickly, not erratically. It drifted laterally down the runway, staying at the same height, maintaining the same size and intensity. It traveled maybe 200 feet, then stopped. The pulsing increased. Faster now, more intense, and then it split. Two spheres, identical, one stayed where it was. The other drifted in the opposite direction. They moved in perfect synchronization, creating a symmetrical pattern along the runway centerline. When they were about 500 feet apart, they both stopped and began to pulse in unison. "Leo, are you seeing this?" "Yeah." "And the sensors are going insane. The readings don't make sense. The magnetic field is warping around them. It's like they're bending the local environment." I watched, transfixed. The two spheres pulsed together for maybe 30 seconds. Then they started to move toward each other. Slowly, deliberately. When they met in the middle, they merged. Two became one. The combined sphere flared brighter than I'd ever seen. Bright enough that I had to shield my eyes even from the tower. And then it vanished. Instantaneous. Gone. The sensors stopped spiking. The readings dropped back to normal. The runway was clear. Leo was staring at the laptop screen, scrolling through data. "Mira, look at this. Right before they merge, the magnetic field readings show a symmetrical collapse. It's like both spheres were creating opposing fields that canceled each other out when they combined. What does that mean?" "I don't know. But it's not random. It's controlled, deliberate." I called Major Reeves. He answered on the second ring. "Jensen." "Major, we just had another event. This time it was different. The sphere split into two, moved independently, then merged and disappeared. The sensors captured everything. I'll be there in 2 hours." He hung up. I looked at Leo. "I think this is bigger than we thought." "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think you're right." Major Reeves arrived with 2 other personnel, both in civilian clothes but carrying themselves like military. They reviewed the sensor data, watched the video footage, and examined the recorded readings without saying much. When they finished, Reeves pulled me aside. "Officer Jensen, the data you've captured is significant. More significant than anything we've recorded at Malmstrom or any other location. The split and merge behavior suggests a level of technological sophistication that's beyond anything we currently possess." "Are you saying this is extraterrestrial?" "I'm saying it's not ours. And if it's not ours, then we need to figure out whose it is." He asked if I'd be willing to participate in a larger investigation. Multiple agencies. Coordinated efforts. Enhanced monitoring across Montana airspace. I agreed without hesitation. Whatever this was, I wanted answers. Over the next month, the equipment was upgraded. More sensors, higher resolution cameras, audio recorders tuned to frequencies beyond normal human hearing. Bozeman became a testing ground, a focal point for tracking and studying whatever was appearing on runway 009L. The incidents continued, not frequently, once every week or two. But each time, the lights did something new. They moved in geometric patterns. They changed colors from blue-white to pale green to deep violet. They emitted sounds that registered on the equipment but were barely audible to human ears. Low-frequency hums, high-frequency tones, pulses that seemed to resonate with the rhythm of the human heartbeat. Pilots continued to report the events. Some diverted. Others landed on alternate runways. A few, the braver ones, continued their approach despite the lights and landed without incident. Those crews reported strange sensations, tingling in their extremities, mild disorientation, a feeling of being watched. One pilot, a cargo captain flying a FedEx Heavy, described it as like flying through someone's gaze. He said the sensation was so strong that he almost called a go-around, but his instruments were stable and the runway was technically clear. He landed, taxied in, and later told me he felt like he'd been scanned. Like something was looking through me, not at me. The FAA issued multiple notices. The media picked up the story. local news stations ran features about the Bozeman lights. Conspiracy theorists flooded the airport with calls and emails. We had to increase security to keep people from trespassing on airport property trying to film the phenomena. It became a circus. But beneath the chaos, the data was piling up. Hundreds of hours of footage, thousands of sensor readings, audio recordings, pilot statements, witness testimonies, and patterns were emerging. The lights appeared most frequently during low traffic hours. They favored clear weather. They never appeared during daylight, and they always, without exception, targeted runway 09L. "Why that runway?" Leo asked one night as we reviewed footage. "Why not 12 or 27? Why always 09 left?" "Maybe it's the orientation," I suggested. 09 left points east-northeast. Maybe there's something about that heading. Or maybe it's what's at the end of the runway. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" I pulled up maps. If you extend the center line of 09 left, it passes directly over the Crazy Mountains. Specifically, over an area that's had multiple UFO reports over the years. Lights, missing time, strange encounters. It's all documented. I felt a chill. "You think there's a connection?" "I think we're seeing part of a bigger picture. Whatever these lights are, they're not isolated to Bozeman. They're part of a network, a system, and we're just one node." The thought was unsettling. One node. That meant there were others, other airports, other locations, other people experiencing the same thing. I started reaching out quietly to other ATC facilities in Montana, Great Falls, Missoula, Billings, Kalispell. I asked if they'd had similar incidents. Most were reluctant to talk, but a few confirmed it. Lights, radar anomalies, system failures, all fitting the same pattern. We were being observed. Major Reeves had been right. But observed for what purpose? What were they studying? What were they looking for? And most importantly, what would happen when they found it? I didn't have answers, no one did. But the frequency of the incidents was increasing. Once a week became twice a week. Then 3 times. The lights were appearing more regularly, staying longer, doing more. It was escalating. On May 3rd, the lights appeared during an approach. A Southwest flight was on final for runway 09L when the sphere materialized. The pilot didn't call a go-around. He continued the approach. I tried to warn him. "Southwest 1847, be advised there is an observed light phenomenon on the runway threshold. Recommend go around." His response was calm. "Tower, we have visual on the light, continuing approach." I watched through the binoculars. The aircraft descended on glide path, steady and stable. The light sphere pulsed brighter as they got closer. At half a mile, the sphere moved. It lifted off the pavement and drifted toward the aircraft. Not fast, not aggressively, but deliberately, closing the distance. "Southwest 1847, the light is moving toward you. Recommend immediate go-around." "Tower, we see it. Initiating go-around." The jet climbed. The light sphere stopped its forward motion and hovered. Then it descended back to the runway and vanished. The whole sequence lasted maybe 45 seconds. But it marked a shift. The lights were no longer passive. They were reacting, engaging. After the Southwest crew landed on runway 12, I spoke with the captain. He was shaken. That thing moved toward us, like it was curious, or testing us. I've been flying for 23 years and I've never seen anything like that. "Did you feel anything? Hear anything?" "Yeah, a hum. Low. Felt it in my chest. And my co-pilot said his watch stopped, just stopped. Had to reset it after we landed." I added his statement to the growing file. Watches stopping. Electronics malfunctioning. Physical sensations. the effects were becoming more pronounced. Whatever these lights were, they were exerting influence beyond just visual presence. They were affecting the physical environment, and that meant they were dangerous. Major Reeves called an emergency briefing. Representatives from the FAA, NORAD, Malmstrom, and several agencies I wasn't cleared to know about gathered via secure video conference. I presented the latest data, the movement toward the aircraft, the increased frequency, the physical effects on personnel and equipment. When I finished, a man I didn't recognize spoke. His voice was calm but carried authority. "Officer Jensen, based on your observations, do you believe these phenomena pose a direct threat to aviation safety?" I chose my words carefully. "Yes, sir, I believe they do. The lights are no longer stationary, they're mobile, they're reactive, and they're appearing more frequently. If they continue to escalate, it's only a matter of time before an aircraft makes contact. And if that happens, I don't know. We don't have any data on what would happen if an aircraft physically interacted with one of these spheres." The man nodded. "Recommendation? Close runway 09 left until we can determine the nature and intent of these phenomena." There was silence then. "That's not an option. Bozeman is a critical node in the regional air network. Closing a primary runway would create significant operational disruptions. With respect, sir, if an aircraft crashes because of these lights, the disruption will be far worse." More silence. Then the man said, "We'll take your recommendation under advisement. Continue monitoring. Continue recording, and keep us informed of any changes." The call ended. I sat there staring at the blank screen. They weren't going to close the runway. They were going to wait and see. Wait and see if something catastrophic happened. It was a gamble, and the stakes were human lives. The lights appeared every night for the next week. Not just on runway 09L. They started showing up at other locations around the airport, near the terminal, along taxiways, in the open fields beyond the perimeter fence. Multiple spheres, sometimes one, sometimes 5 or 6. They moved independently, following no predictable pattern, appearing and disappearing at random intervals. Pilots refused to fly into Bozeman at night. Airlines started rerouting flights. The airport director was fielding calls from executives, politicians, and federal officials demanding explanations. But we didn't have explanations, we had observations, data, evidence, but no understanding of what we were seeing or why it was happening. On May 12th, I arrived for my shift to find the tower surrounded by military vehicles. Uniformed personnel were unloading equipment and setting up a perimeter. Major Reeves met me at the entrance. "We're taking over operations," he said. "FAA authorization. This facility is now under joint civilian-military control until we can resolve the situation." "Resolve it how?" "We're going to make contact." I stared at him. "Contact? With what?" "With whatever is generating these lights. We've set up a communication array. If these phenomena are intelligent, if they're technology-based, then there's a possibility we can establish a dialogue. And if they're not, then we'll know that too." The communication array was impressive. Massive antenna arrays, radio transmitters, laser emitters, audio projectors. Everything you'd need to send signals across multiple spectrums and frequencies. The team working the equipment were specialists, people who knew signal processing and communication theory. They worked through the day, calibrating, testing, preparing. That night, at 23:30, the lights appeared. 3 spheres. Runway 09L. Same location as always. The team activated the communication array and began transmitting radio pulses, light patterns, audio sequences, mathematical progressions, prime numbers, binary code, everything designed to demonstrate intelligence and invite response. The spheres pulsed. Their rhythm changed, syncing with the transmitted signals. They moved closer together, forming a triangular pattern. And then they responded, not with radio, not with light, with sound. A sequence of tones that came through every speaker and audio device in the tower. Low frequency, high frequency, oscillating patterns that followed mathematical sequences. Fibonacci, PA, golden ratio. It wasn't random, it was structured, intentional, communication. The team worked frantically, analyzing the patterns, decoding the sequences. One of the specialists, a woman named Torres, said, "They're acknowledging. They understand what we're doing. They're responding in kind." "Can we establish a two-way dialogue?" Reeves asked. "We can try." Torres adjusted the transmission parameters and sent a new sequence, a simple query. Binary patterns that translated to, "What is your purpose?" The spheres pulsed in unison. The response came through the speakers, a complex sequence that took minutes to analyze. When Torres finished decoding, her face went pale. "What does it say?" Reeves demanded. She looked at him. "Observation." One word. That's all they sent. Observation. Major Reeves had been right. We were being studied, watched, analyzed. But for what reason? To what end? Torres sent another query. "Why observe us?" The response was longer this time, more complex. The decode took over 10 minutes. When it came through, Torres read it aloud. Understanding. Preparation. Threshold. "Threshold?" I said. "Threshold to what?" No one had an answer. Torres sent another query asking for clarification, but the spheres didn't respond. They held their position, pulsing rhythmically, but silent. After 15 minutes of no response, they began to fade, not vanish. Fade, slowly dimming until they were gone. The team reviewed the data. The communication had been real, verifiable, recorded. We had established contact with something non-human, something intelligent, something with technology advanced enough to materialize and dematerialize at will, manipulate electromagnetic fields, and communicate across multiple spectrums. Reeves called in the findings. Within an hour, the secure video conference was active again. The same unidentified man from before appeared on screen. "Major Reeves, confirmed the communication was legitimate." "Confirmed, sir. Multiple vectors, mathematical sequences, intelligent response. No possibility of equipment error or misinterpretation." "And the message content?" "Observation, understanding, preparation, threshold. We don't have context for what threshold means." The man was silent for a moment, then, "We do. Approximately 14 months ago, NORAD detected a series of anomalous signals originating from outside Earth's orbit. Signals that matched the mathematical patterns you've just decoded. We've been tracking these signals and their correlation with terrestrial phenomena, like what you're experiencing at Bozeman. The working theory is that whatever is generating these lights is conducting reconnaissance in preparation for something larger." "Larger how?" Reeves asked. "That's classified, but I can tell you this. Bozeman is one of 17 sites worldwide where contact has been established. All 17 sites are near strategic installations, airports, military bases, communication hubs, locations that would be critical in any scenario involving large-scale coordination or movement. The implications were staggering: reconnaissance, preparation, threshold. They were preparing for something, and we were being cataloged, assessed, studied like specimens." "What's the plan?" I asked. The man looked at me. "The plan is to continue observation, maintain communication attempts, and gather as much data as possible. We need to understand their capabilities and intentions before we make any strategic decisions. And if they're hostile, then we'll deal with that when it becomes clear. For now, we operate under the assumption that contact is preferable to confrontation. The call ended. The tower went quiet. Leo looked at me. Mira, do you realize what we just confirmed? Yeah, we're not alone. No, we're not. And whatever they are, they've been watching us for a while. Long enough to know where our critical infrastructure is. Long enough to coordinate appearances across multiple continents. This isn't random. This is organized. I sat down hard in my chair. Organized. A coordinated, intelligence-driven observation campaign spanning the globe. The lights at Bozeman weren't isolated. They were part of a network, a system, and we had just confirmed that the system was actively communicating with us. Over the following weeks, the communication attempts continued. The spheres appeared regularly. Sometimes they responded to queries. Sometimes they didn't. The messages we decoded were brief, vague, but consistent in theme: observation, analysis, preparation. They were studying us, learning our systems, our responses, our capabilities. Pilots adapted. Some refused to land at night. Others accepted the risk and continued normal operations, trusting that the lights wouldn't interfere as long as they didn't directly engage. The spheres seemed to respect that boundary. They never moved toward an aircraft unless the aircraft diverted toward them. It was a strange dance, a mutual acknowledgement of presence without direct contact. On June 1st, a new development occurred. A commercial flight, United 529 from San Francisco, was on approach to runway 009L when the pilot radioed, "Bozeman Tower, we're picking up a transmission on guard frequency. It's not a distress call. It's a sequence, tones, similar to what we've been briefed about." I felt my pulse spike. Guard frequency is 121.75 MHz, the International Emergency Channel. Every aircraft monitors it. If something was transmitting on guard, every pilot in range would hear it. United 529, can you describe the sequence? Repeating, low tones followed by high tones. Mathematical pattern. It's almost musical. I looked at Leo. Get Torres. Torres arrived within minutes. I explained what United 529 was hearing. She pulled up the frequency monitor and confirmed it. A transmission on 121.5. Clear. Repeating. The same mathematical patterns we'd decoded from the spheres. They're broadcasting, Torres said. Not just to us, to everyone. Why? Reeves asked. Maybe it's an announcement, a declaration, or maybe, she paused, maybe it's an invitation. The transmission continued for 6 hours. Every aircraft in Montana airspace heard it. Pilots reported it to their companies. Companies reported it to the FAA. The FAA reported it to NORAD. And NORAD confirmed that similar transmissions were being detected at 12 other sites worldwide, all broadcasting simultaneously, all using the same frequency, all transmitting the same message. When the decode finished, the message was simple: threshold approaching, stand ready. The world changed that day, not visibly, not dramatically, but fundamentally. Governments convened emergency sessions. Military forces went on heightened alert. Communication networks buzzed with classified traffic. And at Bozeman, we waited. The lights didn't appear for 3 days after the broadcast. The runway was clear. The sensors were quiet. It felt like the calm before something significant. Leo and I worked our shifts, maintaining normal operations, but always watching, always waiting. On June 4th, at exactly midnight, every sensor at Bozeman activated simultaneously. Not just runway 09L. every sensor across the entire airport. The readings were off the scale. Electromagnetic surges, magnetic field distortions, frequency spikes across the entire spectrum. I looked out the tower window. The sky above the airport was filled with lights. Not 3, not 6, hundreds. Spheres of every size, some as small as basketballs, others as large as buildings. They hung motionless in perfect geometric formations, a lattice of light stretching from horizon to horizon. "Leo, are you seeing this?" "Yeah, everyone's seeing this." He was right. The terminal was emptying as passengers and staff poured out onto the tarmac, staring at the sky. The lights didn't pulse. They didn't move. They just hovered, silent and still, casting a pale blue glow across the entire valley. Torres was transmitting queries. No response. The spheres simply remained, watching, waiting, and then, slowly, they began to descend. Not toward the ground, toward the airport, toward us. "Major, we need to evacuate," I said. Reeves shook his head. "No, we hold position. If they wanted to harm us, they would have done it by now." The spheres continued their descent. They passed through the airspace, moving around the terminal, the tower, the aircraft parked at the gates. Close enough to touch. Close enough to see details. They weren't smooth. The surface of each sphere was textured, like liquid metal, shifting and flowing in patterns that suggested movement within. And they hummed, low, resonant. The sound filled the air, filled our chests, made our bones vibrate. One sphere drifted directly toward the tower. It stopped maybe 20 feet from the windows. I could see my reflection in its surface. Distorted, stretched. And behind my reflection, something else. Shapes, shadows, movement. Like there was something inside looking back at me. The sphere pulsed once. The hum intensified. And then every screen in the tower, every monitor, every display lit up with the same image. A star map. Constellations I recognized and others I didn't. A trajectory, a path, starting from a point far outside our solar system and ending here, at Earth. Torres whispered, "They're showing us where they came from." The image shifted. Now it showed Earth. Zooming in, continental outlines. The 17 sites, lines connecting them, a network. The lattice we were seeing in the sky mirrored on the ground. And then text appeared. Not English, not any language I recognized. But somehow I understood it. We all did. Like the meaning was transmitted directly into our minds. "We observe. We prepare. The threshold is now. Will you join?" The question hung in the air. Join. Join what? Join whom? And for what purpose? Reeves keyed the communication array. "What is the threshold?" The response came not through speakers, but through the same direct mental transmission. Evolution. Transition. The next step. And if we refuse, you will be left behind. The spheres began to rise. Slowly. Gracefully, ascending back into the sky. The hum faded, the glow dimmed, and within minutes they were gone. The sky was clear. The stars were visible again, and Bozeman was silent. The data from that night is classified. The video footage, the audio recordings, the decoded messages. All of it locked away in secure facilities that most people don't even know exist. The official story is that the lights were atmospheric phenomena, rare but explainable, caused by ice crystals and temperature inversions and other weather conditions. No one believes it, especially not the people who were there. I left air traffic control 6 months later, not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't look at the sky the same way anymore. Every clear night, I wonder if they'll come back. Every time I see an unexplained light, I wonder if it's them. Watching, waiting, preparing for the next threshold. Leo stayed. He's still at Bozeman, still working the tower, still monitoring the sensors. We talk occasionally. He tells me the lights still appear, less frequently now, but they're still there, still watching, still observing. He says the message hasn't changed. Stand ready. Ready for what? I don't know. None of us do. But I think about the question they asked. Will you join? And I wonder what would have happened if we'd said yes. What would have happened if we'd taken that step? Would we have evolved, transitioned, become something more? Or would we have lost what makes us human? I wrote this account because people deserve to know, not the sanitized version, not the official story. The truth. We made contact. We communicated with something not of this earth. And they gave us a choice that, as far as I know, we never answered. The lights still appear at Bozeman. They still appear at the other 16 sites. And they're still broadcasting their message on guard frequency. If you're a pilot, you've probably heard it. If you're near an airport at night, you might see them. Blue-white spheres, silent, watching, waiting. The threshold is now, that's what they said. I don't know when now ends. I don't know how long the invitation stands. But I know this. Whatever they are, whatever they want, they're patient. They're not forcing anything. They're simply observing, preparing, and waiting for us to make a choice. I think about the captain who said it felt like flying through someone's gaze, like something was looking through him, not at him. That's what this is. We're being looked through. Examined not just physically, but fundamentally, who we are, what we're capable of, whether we're ready for what comes next. I work at a small regional airport now, far from Montana, far from the sites where the lights appear most frequently, but I still watch the sky. I still listen to guard frequency, and I still wonder if one day I'll see those blue-white spheres again, hovering, pulsing, waiting. Stand ready. That's what they said. And so I do. We all do. Whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not, we're all standing at the threshold, waiting to see what comes next, waiting to see if we have the courage to step through. The Bozeman runway lights were just the beginning, a herald, a sign. They showed us that we are not alone, that there are forces beyond our understanding operating in our skies, our airspace, our world. And they gave us a message, not a threat, not a promise, an invitation. The question is, will we accept it? I don't have the answer, but I know this. The lights haven't stopped. The observations haven't ceased. And somewhere, someone is monitoring everything we do, every decision we make, every step we take. They're watching. They're waiting. They're preparing. And so should we. Because the threshold isn't coming. It's already here. And what we do next will determine not just our future, but the future of everything we know. Stand ready. The radio cut out at 23:42 Mountain Time on February 16, 2020. Not static, not interference, just silence. Complete, absolute silence where there should have been the constant background hum of frequency traffic. I've been flying for 17 years, and I know the difference between a radio malfunction and something else. This was something else. My name is Ethan Morales, and I fly charter cargo runs across Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. Small aircraft, night flights, regular routes. I know this airspace the way some people know their hometown streets. What happened that night over Great Falls changed everything I thought I understood about the sky. I was flying a Cessna 208 Caravan loaded with medical supplies from Billings to Great Falls. Standard run. I'd done it maybe 200 times before. The weather was clear, visibility unlimited, temperature at altitude was minus 15 Celsius. Cold, but stable. No winds aloft worth mentioning. Perfect flying conditions. I'd leveled off at 9,500 feet, cruising at 160 knots, following my usual routing that keeps me clear of Malmstrom's airspace but close enough to Great Falls to get a straight-in approach when I'm ready. The flight started normal. I checked in with Salt Lake Center at 23:15, got a frequency change to Great Falls approach at 23:35, and was in contact with the tower by 23:40. The controller's voice was clear, professional. He cleared me for a visual approach to runway 30 and told me to report 3 miles out. I acknowledged. 2 minutes later, my radio went dead. I cycled the power. Nothing. I checked the circuit breakers. All good. I switched to the backup radio. Dead. Both radios, both completely silent. No squelch, no static, no background noise. Just silence. That's not how radios fail. They crackle. They fade. They give you something. This was like someone had pulled the plug on the entire electromagnetic spectrum. I looked at my navigation instruments. GPS was solid. Heading indicator was stable. Altimeter was reading correctly. Everything mechanical and gyroscopic was fine. It was just the radios. Both of them. Simultaneously. I felt the first hint of unease creep into my chest, but I pushed it down. You don't panic in a cockpit. You troubleshoot. You work the problem. You fly the airplane. I was about 12 miles north of Great Falls when I noticed the shadow. At first, I thought it was a cloud formation, but the sky was clear. Not a cloud in sight. The shadow was below me, on the ground, moving at the same speed I was, perfectly circular, maybe a mile in diameter. Dark, distinct, and it shouldn't have been there. There was no moon that night. New moon phase. The only light sources were stars and the scattered lights of farms and small towns below. Not enough to cast a shadow from my aircraft. And even if there were, the shadow wouldn't be a perfect circle. It would be aircraft-shaped. This wasn't an aircraft shadow. This was something else. I watched it move across the landscape. It stayed directly beneath me, matching my ground speed exactly. When I banked slightly to adjust my course, the shadow banked with me. When I flew straight, it flew straight. It was locked to my position, and I had no idea what was causing it. I looked up. Above me, the stars were clear. No clouds, no other aircraft, nothing visible that would create a shadow. But the shadow was there, real, undeniable, and growing larger. I checked my altimeter, still 9,500 feet. I hadn't descended, but the shadow was expanding. Within maybe 30 seconds, it had doubled in size, 2 miles across now, a perfect circle of darkness moving across the Montana landscape, erasing every light it passed over. Farmhouses, roads, cell towers, everything underneath that shadow vanished as it moved. My hands tightened on the yoke. I tried the radio again. Still dead. I needed to contact someone. I needed to report this. But without radio, I was isolated, alone. Flying through clear air, with a shadow beneath me that defied every law of physics I understood. That's when I felt it. A pressure. Not in the cockpit. In my head. Behind my eyes. Like someone was pushing on my skull from the inside. I've experienced hypoxia before during high-altitude training. This wasn't that. My oxygen system was working. My pulse oximeter showed 98%. I was getting plenty of air. But the pressure was there. Building. intensifying. I looked at my instruments again. Everything was still normal except the radios. And then I noticed something else. My magnetic compass was spinning, not drifting. Spinning. Rotating slowly clockwise, ignoring the Earth's magnetic field, pointing at nothing. The heading indicator, which is gyroscopic and shouldn't be affected by magnetic interference, was still solid. But the compass was rotating like it had lost all reference. I glanced back down at the shadow. It had stopped growing, 3 miles across now, a massive circle of darkness directly beneath my aircraft, and it was rising, not the ground rising. The shadow, it was lifting off the terrain, climbing toward me. I could see the edges of it curling upward like the rim of a bowl. The darkness wasn't just on the ground anymore. It was becoming three-dimensional. A sphere, and I was flying directly over the center of it. Every instinct I had screamed at me to dive, to turn, to get away from whatever this was. But I held my course. I don't know why. Maybe because changing course wouldn't help. The shadow had been following me, moving with me. If I turned, it would turn. If I dove, it would dive. Running wouldn't work. The pressure in my head intensified. I felt my teeth vibrating. A low hum, inaudible but physical, resonated through my entire body. It wasn't sound, it was something else, a frequency that bypassed my ears and went straight into my bones. I gripped the yoke harder and kept flying. The shadow reached my altitude. I was flying through it now, through the edge of whatever this massive dark sphere was, and everything outside my windscreen went black. Not dark, black, absolute. I couldn't see the stars, I couldn't see the ground, I couldn't see my own wing lights. It was like flying through ink. I focused on my instruments. Airspeed, steady. Altitude, holding. Heading, stable. The aircraft was flying normally. The controls responded. The engine sounded fine, but I was flying blind, completely blind, and the pressure in my head was making it hard to think. I don't know how long it lasted. My sense of time was distorted. It felt like minutes, but when I checked my watch later, only 47 seconds had passed. 47 seconds of flying through absolute darkness with no visual reference, no radio, and a pressure in my skull that made me want to scream. And then I was through it. The darkness vanished. Stars reappeared. I could see the ground again. The shadow was behind me now, shrinking back toward the terrain. Within seconds, it collapsed back to a point and disappeared entirely. My radios came back online with a burst of static. Cessna 208, Great Falls Tower, do you read? I grabbed the mic. My hands were shaking. Great Falls Tower, Cessna 208, I read you now. I experienced complete radio failure for approximately 3 minutes. Resuming approach. Cessna 208, Roger. We lost contact with you. Radar showed you continuing on course. Are you declaring an emergency? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to land immediately and get out of the sky. But what would I tell them? That I flew through a shadow? That I experienced something I couldn't explain? Negative emergency, I said. Radios are operational now. Continuing approach. Cessna 208. Cleared to land runway 30. Wind calm. I flew the approach mechanically. Descended. Configured. Touchdown. Normal, routine. Like nothing had happened. But my hands didn't stop shaking until I was parked at the cargo ramp with the engine shut down. I sat in the cockpit for a long time after landing. Just sat there, staring at the instruments, trying to process what had happened. The radios were working perfectly now. The magnetic compass had stabilized. Everything was normal, but I knew what I'd experienced. I knew what I'd seen, and I had no explanation for any of it. The ground crew came out to unload the cargo. I climbed out of the aircraft and walked around it, doing a post-flight inspection. Everything looked fine. No damage, no scorch marks, no indication that anything unusual had occurred. I was about to sign off on the inspection when one of the cargo handlers pointed at the belly of the aircraft. "Hey, pilot, what's that on the underside?" I ducked under the fuselage and looked up. The entire belly of the aircraft, from the nose to the tail, was covered in a fine metallic dust. It looked like someone had sprayed metal particles all over the underside. The dust caught the ramp lights and glittered silver gold. I reached up and touched it. It felt gritty, abrasive, like fine sandpaper, and it stuck to my fingers. "I don't know," I said. "We didn't fly through any dust or smoke. Sky was clear." The cargo handler shrugged. "Weird. Want me to get maintenance?" "Yeah. Get someone from maintenance." He walked off. I stood there under the aircraft, staring at the metallic dust, feeling the residue on my fingers. This wasn't normal. Aircraft don't accumulate metallic particles flying through clear air at 9,500 feet. This was evidence. Physical evidence that something had happened. Something real. Something that left a trace. Diane Ferris, the night shift maintenance technician, arrived about 10 minutes later. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with grease under her nails and the no-nonsense attitude of someone who'd been fixing aircraft for 30 years. She looked at the dust, then looked at me. "You fly through a storm?" "No, clear air the whole way." "Industrial area? Factory smoke?" "Nothing. The sky was empty." She scraped some of the dust into a sample bag and held it up to the light. "This looks like metal particulate. Aluminum, maybe, or magnesium. I'll need to test it, but this isn't something you pick up flying through normal air." "Can aircraft generate this kind of dust?" She shook her head. "Not without something seriously wrong with the airframe. And if something was grinding metal inside your plane, you'd know. You'd hear it, feel it. This looks like external contamination." "From what?" "That's the question, isn't it?" She took more samples from different locations on the fuselage. The dust was everywhere on the underside. Thick near the center, thinner toward the edges. Like something had coated the aircraft from below while I was flying. She bagged each sample, labeled them, and then looked at me. "Morales, I need to ask you something. Did anything unusual happen during the flight?" I hesitated. Then I told her. The radio failure, the shadow, the darkness, the pressure in my head. All of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You need to file a report," she said. "About what?" "A shadow and some dust." "About an unexplained event involving radio failure, navigation anomalies, and physical contamination of the aircraft. This isn't normal, and if it happens again, someone needs to have it on record." She was right. I filed the report that night. Detailed, factual, I included everything. The radio failure, the shadow, the darkness, the magnetic compass malfunction, and the metallic dust. I sent it to the FAA, the Airport Operations Office, and my company. Then I went to the hotel and tried to sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that darkness, that absolute black that swallowed everything. And I felt that pressure in my head, that hum in my bones. Something had been out there, something I flew through, and it had marked my aircraft with metallic dust like a signature. The next morning, Diane called me. "Morales, I ran preliminary tests on the dust samples. It's predominantly aluminum with traces of magnesium, titanium, and something else I can't identify. The particle size is extremely fine, submicron. This isn't debris from another aircraft. This isn't industrial fallout. This is engineered." "Engineered how?" "I don't know, but whoever made this knew what they were doing. The particles are uniform in size. That doesn't happen naturally. And the unidentified element. It's not showing up on my standard tests. I'm sending samples to a lab for more detailed analysis. How long will that take? A week, maybe 2. In the meantime, I'm grounding your aircraft until we can clean this off and run a full systems check. I felt a spike of frustration. Diane, I have flights scheduled. And I have an aircraft contaminated with unknown metallic particles. Safety first. You'll fly a different plane until this one's cleared. She was right. I knew she was right. But it felt wrong. Like grounding the aircraft was admitting something had happened. Something we didn't understand and couldn't control. I flew different aircraft for the next 2 weeks while Diane and her team cleaned the caravan and ran diagnostics. Every system checked out. No malfunctions, no damage. The radios worked perfectly in ground tests. The magnetic compass read true. It was like the event had never happened, except for the metallic dust that had been all over the underside of the fuselage. The lab results came back on March 3rd. Diane called me into her office and handed me a printed report. I skimmed it. Most of it was technical jargon I didn't fully understand, but the conclusion was clear. The metallic particles were aluminum, magnesium, titanium alloy with an unknown element that the lab couldn't identify. The particle size was consistent with advanced manufacturing processes, and the distribution pattern suggested the aircraft had passed through a concentrated field of these particles at altitude. What does that mean? I asked. It means you flew through something. A cloud of metallic particles, suspended in the air at 9,500 feet in clear weather, with no source. That's impossible. I know, but the evidence says otherwise. She showed me photographs of the particles under a microscope. They were spherical, perfect spheres, not irregular like dust or debris. These were manufactured, intentionally shaped, and they'd coated my aircraft while I flew through that darkness. Diane, what do you think happened? She leaned back in her chair. Honestly, I think you flew through something that we don't have the technology to explain. Something that generated a field strong enough to kill your radios, disrupt your magnetic compass, and leave physical evidence on your aircraft. I don't know what it was, but I know it was real. I left her office feeling more unsettled than before. Real. The word echoed in my head. It was real. The shadow. The darkness. The metallic particles. All of it documented. All of it evidence, but evidence of what? I didn't fly the Great Falls route for a month after that. I took runs to Billings, Missoula, Kalispell. Anywhere but Great Falls. I told myself it was just scheduling, random chance. But the truth was, I was avoiding it. Avoiding the possibility that it might happen again. Then, on April 9th, my company assigned me a Great Falls run. Medical supplies again. Night flight, same routing. I thought about refusing, thought about calling in sick, but I didn't. Because I needed to know. I needed to know if it was a one-time event or if there was something about that route, that airspace, that corridor between Billings and Great Falls that made it happen. I filed my flight plan, did the pre-flight inspection, loaded the cargo, started the engine. And as I taxied out to the runway, I felt my hands shaking again, not from fear, from anticipation. Because part of me wanted it to happen again. Part of me wanted to see that shadow. To fly through that darkness, to prove to myself that it wasn't a hallucination or a malfunction, that it was real. The flight started normal. I climbed out of Billings, leveled at 9,500 feet, and headed northwest toward Great Falls. The sky was clear again. No moon. Perfect conditions. I checked in with Salt Lake Center, got my frequency changed to Great Falls Approach, and waited. At 23:41, exactly 1 minute before the radio had failed last time, I held my breath, watching, waiting. But nothing happened. The radio stayed active. The tower's voice came through clear. I reported 3 miles out and was cleared to land. Normal approach. Normal landing. No shadow. No darkness. No metallic dust. I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that it hadn't happened again. Disappointment that I didn't have answers. Whatever had occurred on February 16th was either a one-time event or triggered by conditions I didn't understand. Diane was waiting for me at the cargo ramp. Anything? Nothing. Normal flight. She nodded. Good. Maybe it was an anomaly, one-time event, weather conditions we don't understand. Solar activity, something. Maybe. But I didn't believe that, and I could tell she didn't either, because anomalies don't leave engineered metallic particles. Anomalies don't create perfect circular shadows 3 miles across. Anomalies don't fly in formation with aircraft and match their every move. What happened to me on February 16th wasn't an anomaly. It was something else. Something deliberate. Something controlled. And I had a feeling it wasn't over. The second incident happened 3 weeks later. Not to me, to another pilot. His name was Marcus Riley, a cargo pilot like me, flying for a different company but running similar routes across Montana. We crossed paths occasionally at Great Falls, shared coffee in the pilot lounge, traded stories about weather and air traffic delays. Good guy, solid pilot, not the type to make things up or embellish. He called me on May 2nd. His voice was tight. "Morales, I need to talk to you. In person, not over the phone." We met at a diner in Great Falls that evening. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes, hands wrapped around a coffee cup like he was trying to draw warmth from it, even though the diner was plenty warm. "I read your report," he said. "The one you filed about the radio failure in the shadow." I nodded. FAA didn't do much with it. Logged it as unexplained equipment malfunction. Yeah, well, it's not a malfunction. It happened to me last night. I felt my pulse quicken. "Tell me." He described it, almost identical to my experience. Night flight from Billings to Great Falls. Clear weather. Radio failure at 23:42. Shadow beneath the aircraft. Darkness. Pressure in the head. Magnetic compass spinning. And when he landed, metallic dust on the underside of his aircraft. "Did you collect samples?" I asked. Diane Ferris did. She's testing them now. But Morales, there's more. When I flew through the darkness, I saw something. What did you see? He looked around the diner, making sure no one was close enough to hear. Then he leaned in. Shapes inside the darkness, like structures, geometric patterns. They were only visible for a second, maybe less. But I saw them, and they weren't natural. They were artificial, built. I felt ice in my stomach. What kind of structures? I don't know. They were too fast, too brief. But they were there, and they were massive, miles across. Like I was flying through the interior of something hollow. We sat in silence. The implication was clear. We weren't just flying through a shadow or a cloud of particles. We were flying through something physical, something with structure, something so large that an aircraft could pass through it and barely perceive its scale. "Have you filed a report?" I asked. "Yeah, same response as yours. Logged as unexplained. No follow-up, no investigation." "Did you contact Malmstrom?" He shook his head. I thought about it, but what would I tell them? That I think there's a giant invisible structure floating over Montana? They'd laugh me out of the office. Maybe, or maybe they already know. He looked at me. "You think the military knows about this? I think there's a pattern. 2 incidents, same route, same time. Same physical evidence. That's not coincidence. Someone must be tracking this. Or someone's causing it. The thought had crossed my mind. But I didn't want to believe it. Because if someone was causing it, if this was a test or an experiment, that meant we were flying through it without consent, without warning. And that was terrifying in a different way than something unexplained. Diane confirmed the next day that Marcus's aircraft had the same metallic contamination. Same alloy, same particle size, same unknown element. She sent the samples to the same lab and got the same results. 2 aircraft, 3 weeks apart. Identical physical evidence. The pattern was undeniable. I started digging. I called other pilots I knew who flew the Great Falls route. Asked if they'd experienced anything unusual. Most said no. But 3 of them mentioned brief radio glitches at night. Nothing major. Just a few seconds of static or silence. They'd written it off as atmospheric interference or equipment quirks. But now I wondered. I pulled up flight tracking data for the nights of my incident and Marcus's incident. Multiple aircraft had flown through the same airspace within an hour of our events. Commercial flights, cargo flights, private planes. None of them reported anything unusual, which meant either we were uniquely unlucky or there was something specific about our flights that made us targets. I looked at the specifics. Both of us were flying Cessna Caravans, single-engine turboprops, both flying at the same altitude, 9,500 feet, both flying the same route, Billings to Great Falls, both flying at night, and both experiencing the event at almost exactly the same time, 23:42. That couldn't be random. The precision was too exact. Something was waiting in that airspace, at that altitude, at that time. And it was interacting with specific aircraft in specific ways. I called Diane. Can you check something for me? Pull maintenance records for caravans that fly the Great Falls route. See if any others have shown metallic contamination in the past 6 months. She called back 2 hours later. Morales, you're going to want to sit down. Why? I found 4 other aircraft. 4 caravans that had metallic dust on their undersides after flying the Great Falls route. All of it was cleaned off during routine maintenance and logged as environmental contamination. No one thought anything of it. When? Between December and February. All-night flights. All within a week of each other. 4 aircraft. Plus mine, plus Marcus's, 6 total. All Cessna Caravans. All flying the same route. All contaminated with the same metallic particles. This wasn't random, this was systematic. Diane, did any of those pilots report radio failures or unusual events? I checked the logs. 2 of them noted brief communication issues. Nothing they considered worth reporting beyond a maintenance note. And the other 2? No reports of anything unusual. Which meant either those pilots didn't experience the full event, or they did and chose not to report it. Either way, the pattern was clear. Something was happening in the airspace between Billings and Great Falls. Something that targeted Cessna Caravans flying at 9,500 feet at night. And it left physical evidence every time. I contacted the FAA regional office again. This time, I had data. 6 aircraft, identical contamination, pattern of radio failures. I compiled everything into a detailed report and requested an investigation. The response came back a week later. Thank you for your report. The information has been reviewed and logged. At this time, we do not have sufficient evidence to warrant a formal investigation. Please continue to report any unusual events according to standard procedures. Standard bureaucratic brush-off. But I wasn't surprised. The FAA deals with thousands of reports every year. Most of them are mundane. Equipment failures, weather delays, near-miss incidents. Something as vague as mysterious shadow and metallic dust wasn't going to trigger an investigation without more concrete evidence. I needed more. I needed proof that would force them to take this seriously. And that meant flying the route again, deliberately, with recording equipment. I told Diane my plan. She looked at me like I was crazy. You want to fly back into whatever that thing is? On purpose? I want it documented. Video, audio, instrument readings. If I can capture clear evidence, the FAA will have to investigate. Or you'll end up as another unexplained incident in their files. Maybe, but I have to try. She was quiet for a moment. Then, okay, let me help. I can install cameras in the cockpit. Forward-facing, upward-facing, and downward-facing. High resolution, night capable. And I can wire in a data recorder to capture all your instrument readings in real time. You can do that? I'm a maintenance technician. I can do a lot of things. It took her 3 days to install the equipment. 3 small cameras mounted discreetly in the cockpit, all feeding to a digital recorder. A data logger connected to the aircraft's systems, recording every parameter. Airspeed, altitude, heading, GPS coordinates, radio frequencies, even the magnetic compass readings. Everything would be captured. Everything would be documented. On May 23rd, I filed a flight plan for a Great Falls run. Medical supplies, night flight, same routing as before. I did the pre-flight inspection with extra care, checking every system twice. The cameras were active. The data logger was recording. I was ready. The flight started normal. I climbed out of Billings and leveled at 9,500 feet. The sky was clear. New moon again. Perfect conditions. I checked in with Salt Lake Center and got my frequency changed to Great Falls approach right on schedule. Everything was routine. At 23:40, I started watching the clock, counting down. 23:41, 23:42. My radio stayed active. No shadow appeared. I flew past the point where it should have happened and continued toward Great Falls. Nothing. Clear flight, normal landing. I felt a mixture of relief and frustration. I'd equipped the aircraft with recording gear, prepared myself mentally, and nothing had happened. Either I'd scared it off with the cameras, or the event wasn't predictable in the way I thought. I flew the route 5 more times over the next 2 weeks. Different days, different times. Always at night. Always at 9,500 feet. Every flight was normal. No radio failures, no shadows, no darkness. It was like whatever had been there in February and April had moved on, or was waiting. Marcus flew the route during the same period. He also experienced nothing unusual. We started to think maybe it was over. Maybe the events had been a limited phenomenon, a temporary condition caused by atmospheric factors we didn't understand. Something that had dissipated. Then, on June 14th, it happened again. I wasn't flying. I was in the pilot lounge at Great Falls when the call came in. A Cessna Caravan, inbound from Billings, had experienced complete radio failure at 23:42. The pilot managed to land safely using light gun signals from the tower, but he was shaken. When the aircraft was inspected, the underside was covered in metallic dust. I ran out to the ramp. The pilot was standing next to his aircraft, staring at the belly. I recognized him, Aaron Holt. Young guy, maybe late 20s, relatively new to cargo flying. He looked pale. "Did you see it?" I asked. He turned to me. "See what?" "The shadow, the darkness. How did you know?" I told him about my incident, about Marcus's incident, about the pattern. He listened, nodding slowly. I thought I was losing my mind. I flew through complete darkness. I couldn't see anything, and there was pressure. In my head, like something was pushing on my skull. "Did you see any structures? Any geometric patterns?" He hesitated. "Yeah?" For a second. I saw lines, straight lines, glowing faintly. They looked like a grid or a lattice. and then I was through it. A grid that matched what Marcus had described. Structures, artificial patterns. Whatever we were flying through wasn't just a shadow or a cloud. It was something built, something with internal architecture. Diane collected samples from Aaron's aircraft. Same contamination, same alloy, same results. 7 aircraft now. 7 incidents, all following the same pattern. The phenomenon wasn't dissipating. It was recurring, regularly, predictably. I compiled all the data: dates, times, pilot statements, metallic analysis, instrument anomalies. I created a comprehensive report and sent it not just to the FAA, but to NORAD, Malmstrom Air Force Base, and the National Transportation Safety Board. I included photographs of the metallic dust, lab analysis, pilot testimonies, and my theory that aircraft flying between Billings and Great Falls at 9,500 feet were regularly encountering an unknown aerial phenomenon that caused radio failures, magnetic interference, and physical contamination. The response from Malmstrom came first. A phone call from a Major Keller, liaison officer for civilian coordination. He asked if I could come to the base for a meeting. I agreed. The meeting was in a secure conference room. Present were Major Keller, 2 other officers I wasn't introduced to, and a civilian contractor whose credentials identified him as working for the Department of Defense. They listened to my presentation without interruption. When I finished, Major Keller leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Morales, what you're describing correlates with events we've been tracking for approximately 9 months. We have radar data showing anomalous returns in the same airspace you've identified. The returns appear and disappear without following normal flight patterns. They don't have transponders, they don't respond to radio contact, and they generate electromagnetic interference consistent with what you've experienced ahead. What are they? Unknown. But we've ruled out civilian aircraft, military aircraft, and natural atmospheric phenomena. Whatever these objects are, they're using technology that doesn't match anything in our databases." The civilian contractor spoke up. "Mr. Morales, the metallic particles you've collected are significant. We've analyzed similar samples from other locations and found the same unknown element. We believe it's a signature, a marker, something intentionally left behind." "A marker for what?" "That's what we're trying to determine. But the pattern suggests reconnaissance. These objects appear to be studying aircraft, observing flight characteristics, collecting data, and marking the aircraft they interact with." Reconnaissance. The word settled in my gut like lead. We weren't just flying through something. We were being studied, observed, tagged, like specimens in an experiment. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Major Keller answered. "We want you to continue flying the route. We're going to enhance your aircraft with additional monitoring equipment, more sophisticated than what you're currently using. We need comprehensive data, and we need someone who's experienced the phenomenon and is willing to deliberately engage with it." "You want me to be bait?" "We want you to be an observer, a recorder, someone who can help us understand what's happening in our airspace." I thought about it. The logical part of my brain said no, said this was dangerous, said I should refuse and stay as far away from that airspace as possible. But another part, the part that had felt that pressure in my head and seen that darkness, wanted answers, needed answers. "Okay," I said, "I'll do it." The equipment Malmstrom installed was extensive. Multiple cameras with infrared and ultraviolet capability. Audio recorders tuned to frequencies beyond human hearing. Electromagnetic field detectors. Radiation monitors. GPS trackers with millisecond precision. Everything wired to a hardened data recorder that would survive even if the aircraft didn't. Diane oversaw the installation. She wasn't happy about it. Morales, you're flying into something we don't understand. Something that's marked 7 aircraft. What if it decides to do more than mark next time? Then I'll deal with it. But we need to know what this is. Why? Why does it matter? You could just stop flying the route. Because other pilots are flying it. Pilots who don't know what's out there. Pilots who aren't prepared. If I can document this, if I can help figure out what it is, maybe we can protect them. She shook her head, but didn't argue further. When the installation was complete, she walked me through every system. How to activate the cameras, how to monitor the data feeds, how to ensure everything was recording properly. "Promise me something," she said. "What?" "If it gets bad, if you feel like you're losing control, you bail, you turn around, you don't push through. Your life is worth more than data." I promise. I flew the route on June 28th. All systems active. All cameras recording. I checked in with Salt Lake Center and announced my intentions. They acknowledged. Major Keller was monitoring from Malmstrom. He had direct access to my data feeds. If something happened, he would see it in real time. I leveled at 9,500 feet and headed toward Great Falls. The sky was clear. New moon. The countdown began. 2340, 2341, 2342. My radios went silent. But this time, I was ready. I activated the backup recording system and started narrating into a handheld voice recorder. Radio failure confirmed. Time: 2342:07. Scanning for visual contact with phenomenon. The shadow appeared. Directly below. Circular, massive. I watched it through the downward-facing camera. It was rising, just like before, but now I could see more detail. The edges weren't smooth. They were segmented, like panels or tiles. The shadow was composed of thousands of individual sections arranged in a geometric pattern. Shadow confirmed, rising toward aircraft altitude. Estimate size 3 miles diameter. Structure is segmented, not uniform. The darkness engulfed the aircraft. Absolute black. But the cameras could see what my eyes couldn't. Infrared showed heat signatures. Not from the aircraft. From outside, from whatever I was flying through. The signatures were arranged in patterns, rings, concentric circles, like I was inside something cylindrical. Inside the darkness. Infrared showing thermal patterns. Circular configuration. Temperature differential approximately 30 degrees Celsius warmer than ambient. The pressure hit. Harder than before, my vision blurred. I fought to keep my eyes on the instruments. Airspeed steady, altitude holding. The aircraft was fine, but I wasn't. The pressure was crushing. I could barely think. And then I saw them. The structures Marcus and Aaron had described, but clearer now, visible on the UV cameras. Lines of light. Geometric patterns. They weren't glowing faintly, they were bright. A lattice of crystalline structures forming walls, corridors, chambers. I was flying through the interior of something vast, something built. Structures visible on UV, geometric, artificial. Corridor approximately half-mile wide, multiple branches. This is not natural. Repeat, not natural. This is architecture. My magnetic compass was spinning wildly. The electromagnetic field detectors were maxed out. The radiation monitors were showing elevated levels, but nothing immediately dangerous. And then the data recorder captured something else. A signal, radio frequency. Not random noise. Not interference. A signal, modulated, patterned, like communication. Receiving radio signal on multiple frequencies. Signal is structured. Possible communication, recording for analysis. The darkness released me. I burst out into clear air. Stars reappeared. The shadow collapsed below and vanished. My radios came back online. Great Falls Tower was calling. Cessna 208, Great Falls Tower, do you read? I was breathing hard, sweating. My hands were shaking on the yoke. But I'd made it through. And this time, I had everything recorded. Great Falls Tower, Cessna 208, I read you. Resuming approach. I landed, taxied to the ramp, shut down the engine, and sat in the cockpit reviewing the camera feeds. It was all there. Everything. The shadow, the structures, the thermal patterns, the signal, undeniable, documented, real. Major Keller met me at the ramp with a team. They downloaded the data from the recorder and examined the aircraft. Metallic dust, as expected. But this time they collected samples immediately, using sealed containers and handling procedures that suggested they knew more about this stuff than they'd told me. Morales, we need to debrief you. Now, while the experience is fresh. We went to a secure room at the airport. I walked them through every second, narrated the entire event. They recorded everything, asked questions, clarified details. When I finished, Keller played back the signal we'd captured. It was clear, distinct, a series of tones and pulses that followed mathematical patterns. We've heard this before, Keller said. Similar signals have been detected at other locations. We've been trying to decode it. So far, no success. But now we have a clearer recording. This might be the breakthrough we need. What do you think it is? Communication. We're certain of that. But we don't know if it's directed at us or if it's internal communication within whatever structure you flew through. What structure? What is that thing? He was quiet for a moment. Based on the data we've collected over the past 9 months, we believe it's a form of technology that can phase in and out of visibility. It's there, occupying physical space, but it's only visible under specific conditions, or only visible to specific sensors. Your UV cameras captured it because it emits in that spectrum. But to the naked eye, to normal cameras, to standard radar, it's invisible. How is that possible? We don't know, but we have theories. Advanced metamaterials, manipulation of the electromagnetic spectrum, technology that's beyond our current understanding. What we do know is that it's been in Montana airspace for at least 9 months, possibly longer, and it's studying our aircraft, our flight patterns, our capabilities. Who built it? That's the question we can't answer. We've ruled out every nation with advanced aerospace capability. This isn't Russian, isn't Chinese, isn't anything we recognize, which leaves 2 possibilities. It's from a black program so classified that even we don't know about it. Or it's from somewhere else. He didn't say it explicitly, but the implication was clear. Non-human, extraterrestrial. The word hung between us, unspoken but understood. Over the next month, I flew the route 12 more times. Each time, the equipment captured more data. The structure appeared every time. Always at 2342, always in the same location. Always lasting approximately 47 seconds. The signal grew clearer with each recording, and the analysis team at Malmstrom started to detect patterns. The signal wasn't random. It contained information, mathematical sequences, prime numbers, geometric ratios, the same kinds of patterns humans might use to demonstrate intelligence in a first contact scenario, which suggested whoever or whatever was operating that structure wanted to be understood, or wanted us to know they were intelligent. On July 30th, Keller called me to Malmstrom for a briefing. Present were representatives from multiple agencies I wasn't cleared to know. The room was secure. The atmosphere was tense. Mr. Morales, we've made progress decoding the signal. The mathematical patterns form a coordinate system, spatial coordinates. We believe they're describing the structure's dimensions and position relative to fixed points on Earth. But there's more. Embedded in the signal are temporal markers, timestamps, and projections. Projections of what? Future appearances. We think the signal is telling us when and where the structure will manifest next. Why would it do that? That's the question that has everyone concerned. Why would an unknown intelligence announce its movements? Why make itself predictable? Unless it wants us to find it. Unless it wants contact. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Contact. Not observation. Not reconnaissance. Actual contact. Communication. Interaction. What do you want me to do? We want you to fly the route on the dates indicated by the projections. We're going to be ready. Full sensor arrays. Aircraft standing by. Ground teams positioned. If this structure is announcing contact, we're going to meet it. The first projected date was August 14th. I flew the route with more equipment than ever. Military observers on the ground. Radar tracking from multiple locations. Satellite coverage. Everyone was watching, waiting. At 23:42, the radios went silent. The shadow appeared. I flew into the darkness, and this time, something changed. The structure didn't just surround me. It responded. The lattice of light shifted. The patterns rearranged, forming shapes, symbols, and then, in the center of my windscreen, visible on every camera, a single image appeared. A sphere, blue-white, rotating slowly, and inside it a detailed map of Earth. The signal came through every frequency simultaneously. Not tones, not pulses, a voice. Synthesized, mechanical, but clear. Observation complete. Understanding achieved. Threshold approaching. Prepare. The same message that had been broadcast at other locations. The same words. And then the structure released me. The darkness vanished. The radios returned. I was through. Keller and his team analyzed the data for days. The message was clear. Observation complete. They'd studied us, learned our aircraft, our flight patterns, our technology, and they'd determined we'd reached some kind of threshold. The question was, threshold to what? On August 28th, the structure appeared in daylight. Multiple civilian witnesses saw it. A massive, circular shadow over Great Falls. Visible for approximately 3 minutes. News crews filmed it. Photographers captured it. The FAA couldn't dismiss it. The military couldn't classify it away. It was there. Public. Undeniable. I was on the ground when it happened. I just finished a morning cargo run to Missoula and was grabbing coffee at the airport terminal when people started pointing at the sky. I walked outside and looked up. There it was, the shadow. But in daylight, you could see more. It wasn't just darkness. It was a distortion. Like looking at the sky through warped glass. The clouds behind it were twisted, stretched, bent around something invisible. And in the center, barely perceptible, was a shimmer. Like heat rising off summer pavement, except the air was cool and the sky was clear. My phone started ringing. Keller. Morales, are you seeing this? Yeah, I'm at the airport. It's right above us. We've got every sensor pointed at it. Radar's picking it up now. Multiple contacts, not just one object. Dozens. All arranged in that same geometric pattern you described. They're not hiding anymore. I watched as news helicopters circled at a distance, cameras filming. The shadow stayed motionless for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 90 seconds. People on the ground were taking photos, videos, live streaming to social media. Whatever secrecy had surrounded this phenomenon was gone. This was a public event, witnessed by thousands. And then the structure did something new. It pulsed, not with light, with gravity. I felt it in my chest, a wave of pressure that made my knees buckle. Car alarms started going off across the parking lot. Windows in the terminal building vibrated, and for just a second, maybe less, I heard a sound. Not through my ears, through my bones. The same hum I'd felt flying through the darkness. Except this time, everyone heard it. Everyone felt it. The shadow collapsed inward, shrinking to a point in the center and then expanded outward in a perfect ring. The ring grew, racing across the sky faster than sound, and when it reached the horizon, it disappeared. The structure was gone. The sky was normal again, but the silence that followed was absolute. No one spoke. No one moved. We all just stood there, staring at where it had been. My phone rang again. Keller's voice was tight. We recorded everything: the gravitational pulse, the electromagnetic signature, the spatial distortion. This wasn't observation anymore. This was a demonstration. A demonstration of what? Power. Control. They're showing us what they can do. And more importantly, they're showing everyone. This wasn't hidden in a flight corridor at night. This was broad daylight. Downtown Great Falls, they wanted witnesses. The media coverage was immediate and overwhelming. Every news network picked up the story. Experts were brought on to explain what people had seen. Meteorologists talked about atmospheric phenomena. Physicists mentioned optical illusions and temperature inversions. But none of it matched the footage. None of it explained the gravitational pulse or the sound that thousands of people had felt in their bones. The FAA issued a statement calling it an unexplained aerial event and promising a full investigation. NORAD released a brief comment confirming radar contact with multiple unidentified objects, but provided no further details. And Malmstrom went silent. No statements. No press releases. They locked down completely. I was called to the base the next day. This time, the meeting wasn't in a conference room. It was in a secure underground facility that I didn't even know existed. Present were military personnel, government officials, and scientists I wasn't introduced to. Keller was there, but he looked different. Tired, stressed, like he hadn't slept. A man in a suit took the lead. No introduction, no credentials shown. Mr. Morales, we need to discuss what happens next. The public event yesterday changed the situation. We can no longer contain this through normal channels. The phenomenon is now public knowledge, and that means we need to shift our approach. What approach? Contact, real contact. Not just observation and documentation. We need to communicate with whatever is operating that structure. We need to understand their intent, and we need to do it before public panic forces political decisions that could be dangerous. Why me? I'm just a cargo pilot. Because you've had more direct interaction with the phenomenon than anyone else. You've flown through it 12 times. You've documented it. You've survived it. And for reasons we don't understand, it hasn't harmed you. You might be our best chance at establishing communication without triggering a hostile response. I felt the weight of what he was asking settle on my shoulders. What do you want me to do? We want you to fly the route one more time, but this time we're going to broadcast a message. A signal designed to demonstrate intelligence and peaceful intent. We're going to use your aircraft as a transmitter, and if they respond, you'll be the first point of contact. The plan was ambitious, almost reckless. They equipped my caravan with a high-powered radio transmitter capable of broadcasting across multiple frequencies simultaneously. The message was simple: mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and a binary code that translated to, "We seek understanding." The hope was that if the structure appeared again, it would recognize the signal as intentional communication and respond in kind. Diane installed the equipment personally. She was even less happy about this than the monitoring gear. Morales, you're going from observer to active participant. That's a different level of risk. I know, But if we don't try, we'll never know what they want. And if they don't want us to know, if they respond badly, then at least we'll have an answer. She didn't look reassured. When the installation was complete, she walked me through the activation sequence. The transmitter is on a separate circuit. When you hit the button, it broadcasts automatically. You don't control the content. That's preloaded. All you do is initiate. And if something goes wrong, there's a kill switch, red button on the left side of the panel. Hit that, everything shuts down. But Morales, if you use it, you're cutting off communication. You might not get another chance. Understood. I flew the route on September 3rd, evening departure. I'd requested a slightly earlier takeoff to ensure I'd be at 9,500 feet well before 2342. The sky was clear, no moon, perfect conditions. As I climbed out of Billings, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. This was it, the moment where we moved from passive observation to active engagement. Keller was on the radio from Malmstrom. "Morales, we're tracking you. All systems green. When you reach the target zone, wait for my signal before activating the transmitter." Copy that. I leveled at 9,500 feet and flew toward the coordinates where the structure consistently appeared. My hands were steady on the yoke, but my heart was pounding. At 2340, Keller came back on. 2 minutes. Prepare to activate on my mark. I put my hand on the transmitter button. Waiting. The seconds ticked by. 23's. 41. Still nothing. And then, at exactly 23:42, my radios went silent. The shadow appeared below, rising toward me. This was it. "Transmitter active," I said into the voice recorder, knowing the radio wouldn't carry my voice. I pressed the button. The panel lit up. The transmitter was broadcasting. The darkness engulfed me. But this time something was different. The pressure in my head was there, but it felt different. Not invasive. Curious. Like something was examining me more carefully. The structures on the UV cameras were brighter, more defined. And the lattice wasn't static, it was moving, reconfiguring, responding. And then I heard it. Not a signal on the radio, a voice. Not in my ears, in my head. Clear. Distinct. Speaking in a language I didn't know, but somehow understood. "You have learned to speak. We acknowledge." My breath caught. This was it, direct communication. I fumbled for the handheld recorder and started speaking. "We seek understanding. We want to know your purpose." The response came immediately. "Our purpose is observation, study, preparation. You approach threshold. We determine readiness. Readiness for what? Integration. The universe is vast, many forms, many intelligences, some ready, some not. We observe, we assess, we report. Report to whom? Those who maintain balance, those who guide. You are young, your species. You have potential, but you are volatile, dangerous to yourselves. We study to determine if you are ready for larger community." The implications hit me like a physical force. They weren't invaders. They weren't a threat. They were observers, evaluators, deciding whether humanity was ready to join something bigger, some kind of galactic community or federation. The concept was overwhelming. What happens if you determine we're not ready? You continue as you are, isolated, observed from distance, until readiness is achieved, or until you extinguish yourselves. Many species do not survive to threshold. They destroy themselves before maturity. We hope this is not your path. And if we are ready, then contact becomes open, direct. Your world will learn it is not alone. Your species will join others. Knowledge will be shared, but this cannot happen unless readiness is proven. How do we prove readiness? You already are. This communication, this seeking, this demonstrates potential, but potential is not certainty. We require more observation, more time. The threshold is close. Perhaps 1 generation, perhaps 2. When you are ready, we will return, and contact will be unmistakable. The darkness began to fade. The voice grew fainter. Continue seeking. Continue growing. Continue reaching beyond your world. These are signs of readiness. We will watch. We will wait. And when the time is right, we will speak again. The structure released me. I burst into clear air. My radios came back online. Keller was calling, his voice urgent. Morales, what happened? We lost your data feed for 90 seconds. Did you make contact? I took a breath, trying to steady my voice. Yeah, I made contact, and you're not going to believe what they told me. The debriefing lasted 8 hours. I recounted every word, every sensation, every detail of the communication. The room was silent when I finished. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the man in the suit who'd led the previous meeting leaned forward. Mr. Morales, what you're describing aligns with theories we've been developing based on similar contact events at other locations worldwide. We're not the only ones who've experienced this. Russia, China, the European Union, they've all had encounters. And the message is consistent. We're being evaluated, assessed for readiness to join some kind of larger interstellar community. Do you believe it? I asked. I believe you experienced something profound. Whether that something was extraterrestrial intelligence or advanced human technology pretending to be extraterrestrial, I can't say. But the implications are the same. We're being watched. We're being tested. And our response to that reality will determine our future. Over the following weeks, I was interviewed by multiple agencies. Each one wanted the same story, the same details, the same assurances that what I'd experienced was real. And each one came to the same conclusion. The phenomenon was genuine, the communication was credible, and humanity was indeed being observed by an intelligence far beyond our current understanding. The structure never appeared again. Not in Great Falls, not in Bozeman, not in Billings. The pattern of incidents stopped completely. It was as if the message had been delivered and the observers had moved on to watch from a different vantage point. The metallic dust samples Diane had collected became the only physical evidence that remained. Everything else was data, recordings, testimonies, stories. But the impact didn't fade. The public sighting in August had opened a door that couldn't be closed. People knew something was out there, something real, something intelligent. And even though the official explanations remained vague and non-committal, the truth was spreading. Pilots talked. Air traffic controllers shared stories. Maintenance technicians compared notes. A network of witnesses emerged, all describing similar experiences, all pointing to the same conclusion. We are not alone. I continued flying cargo routes across Montana. But the job felt different now. Every time I climbed to altitude, every time I looked out at the vast sky, I thought about what was out there. Not just stars and planets, other intelligences, other civilizations, watching us, evaluating us, waiting to see if we would grow up, if we would mature enough to join them. Marcus called me one night 6 months after my last communication. Morales, I need to tell you something. I had another encounter. Not in Montana, in Wyoming. Same phenomenon, same message. They told me the same thing they told you. Threshold approaching, readiness being assessed. I think they're expanding the observation, looking at more pilots, more locations. More data points. Did you report it? Yeah, same response, logged and filed. But no real follow-up. It's like they've moved into a waiting phase, watching but not intervening, just observing. Aaron reported a similar experience 3 weeks later. And then 2 other pilots I didn't know. The pattern was expanding. More encounters, more communication, more confirmation that we were part of something much larger than we'd imagined. Diane eventually left her position at Great Falls. She took a job with a private research firm that was studying the metallic particles. She called me to say goodbye. Morales, I'm going to keep working on this. Those samples you collected, they're not from Earth. The isotope ratios don't match anything in our solar system. That unknown element, it's still unknown, and the more we study it, the more questions we have. Do you think we'll ever understand it? I think we're trying to understand technology that's thousands of years ahead of us, maybe millions. It's like trying to explain a smartphone to someone from the Stone Age. The concepts don't even exist in their framework. But we'll keep trying, because that's what humans do. We don't give up. We keep reaching, and maybe that's what makes us ready. The official investigation concluded with a non-conclusion. The FAA reported that multiple unexplained aerial events had occurred in Montana airspace, that physical evidence had been collected, and that no conventional explanation could account for the observations. They recommended continued monitoring and encouraged pilots to report any unusual phenomena. And that was it. No grand revelation. No public acknowledgement of extraterrestrial contact. Just a bureaucratic shrug and a file that would sit in some archive gathering dust. But for those of us who'd been through it, the experience changed everything. We knew the truth. We'd touched something beyond our world. We'd communicated with intelligence that measured time in eons and viewed humanity as children who might, one day, grow up. I think about the voice I heard in that darkness, the message it delivered. Continue seeking. Continue growing. Continue reaching beyond your world. Those words have become a kind of mantra for me. A reminder that what we do matters, that our choices as a species have consequences that extend far beyond our planet, that we're being watched not by judges, but by observers who hope we'll succeed. The Great Falls. Silence ended, but its message continues. Every pilot who flies through that airspace knows there's something more out there. Every controller who watches the radar screens knows that some contacts can't be explained. Every maintenance technician who cleans strange residue off aircraft knows that we're touching something beyond our understanding. And all of us, in our own ways, are preparing for the day when the threshold is crossed, when the observation period ends, when contact becomes open and undeniable, when humanity joins the larger community that has been watching and waiting for us to be ready. I don't know when that day will come. 1 generation, 2, maybe more, but I know it's coming, and I know that when it does, we'll look back at these encounters, the Billings radar gap, the Bozeman lights, the Great Falls silence, as the first tentative steps in a much longer journey. A journey that will take us beyond our world and into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Until then, I fly, I watch, I wait, and I remember the words that changed everything. We will watch, we will wait, and when the time is right, we will speak again. The silence isn't an ending. It's a pause, a breath between acts.